Meeting to order at 6:02. Before we get started, we're going to make a little adjustment to the agenda. We're going to move the public comment period to after the SEL supports the update under executive limitations monitoring. Liz is going to take our minutes. And before we get started, I just wanted to let people know, we understand people are upset. A hard and difficult thing happened in the Bristol Elementary School community last week. The board met last night in a special meeting, and we were able to hear from the building principal and the administration some more information to better understand what happened within the limits of confidentiality and privacy rules that we are obligated by. We want to acknowledge and appreciate the ongoing work of all the people in our schools to support our students. We had this presentation about the SEL work in our schools on our agenda, so we could learn more and hear more about the systems that are currently in place. While this may not address all the questions and concerns people have about what happened at BES last Friday, we can all learn together about the ongoing work that is happening to support students across the district. Public comment will follow the presentation, and if you have specific questions about the information shared in the presentation, now this is just the information shared in the presentation, you can submit them by email to one of the board representatives in the town you live in. So there's a speakers list when we do get to public comment that we'll use to accommodate the people in the room. The people on Zoom, if you'd like to be on a speakers list, if you would please email me, dawn.griswold@mausd.org, and I will consider your email the list, and we will work back and forth between the room and the Zoom during the public comment time. All right, so at this time, we have to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Steve. I'll second. And Sarah. All right. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we're going to move down. Patrick's going to lead for a little bit and walk us through this work.
Yeah, so I wanted to start with a memo that I sent out just earlier this evening that I think helps set the context for, it kind of bridges the event on Friday and the presentation that we're going to be hearing tonight from building principals around the district. And so I'm just going to read it verbatim as it went out and then sort of make the extension to the presentations that we're going to hear. So last week, a student in crisis at BES caused damage to the building by throwing rocks at windows. In total, 11 windows were damaged. No students or staff were injured. However, the event was significant and several students, staff, and visitors were understandably frightened and upset by the event. Knowing a crisis command to evacuate that portion of the building had been given, the decision to accept the fact that there would be property damage was made in favor of keeping staff and students safe. Efforts are ongoing to help ensure students and staff have support as they process how they were impacted by the event. This event has understandably resurrected fears and emotions from last fall when BES was challenged by similar incidents, though not from the same student. Many people want to find someone to blame for incidents like this. Some want to blame administrators, some want to blame the family, some want to blame the students. The reality is there's no villain in situations like this. There are students and families in need, and there are caring, committed, compassionate educators working with partner agencies to help meet that need. Collectively, we have many success stories that you likely will never read about on social media. And we have some cases where our tremendous efforts do not achieve the results that we want for our students and their families. Many want guarantees that nothing like this will happen at school. That's not a guarantee that anyone could ever make. To do so would mean stripping students and families of their right to an education and would involve removing many more students from their community schools, effectively ostracizing them from their home community. I don't believe this is the way anyone wants to treat the children in our communities. I'm certain it's not the way anyone would want their child treated. I believe our communities want to and need to wrap their arms around our neediest students and families and give them all the love and support they need to work through their challenges. When all of our love and support and the very best we have to offer are not enough to meet their needs, then we consider finding a place outside of our community that's better suited to meet their needs. While I'm not able to offer a guarantee, I'm offering the reasonable assurance that your children are safe in our schools. We have robust resources to support students, including social workers, school psychologists, interventionists, guidance counselors, school-based clinicians, school nurses, support staff, one of the best mentoring programs in the state, and amazing educators and administrators. This is all in addition to our strong relationship with the Counseling Service of Addison County, the Department for Children and Families, and the Bristol Police Department. I would argue the support we have in place would rival any other school district in the state. Events like this aren't happening because we're lacking resources. They aren't happening because someone isn't doing their job well enough. They aren't happening because students are choosing to misbehave. They happen because some of our students and families have complex and challenging needs, and meeting those needs can be equally complex and challenging. Under these circumstances, it's difficult to ensure that we have just the right amount and type of support in place all the time, because what's needed is often changing. If there is a guarantee I can offer you, it's that we will remain committed to meeting the needs of all students in MAUSD and to keep student and staff safety as our top priority. So the connection for me from this communication and the event on Friday and what we're going to hear tonight from principals is that we're going to dig a little deeper into the resources we have. You're going to hear from building principals specifically about what's happening in their buildings, what's successful, and what are some of the challenges. There are plenty of challenges that we continue to work through on a daily basis, and there are plenty of things that are working well. And the point of tonight, we were looking forward to an opportunity outside of a crisis moment to hear about some of the systems and strategies and work that's happening. And so planning has been ongoing for this day for a couple of months now. Unfortunately, it's no longer in the sort of proactive, not reactive mode, but I think it's still important to really understand more about what's happening in our schools. And so with that, I will turn it over to Travis Park, who's going to get us started.
So when we were deciding who would go first, I decided to say, let's go alphabetically. Number one, so I get that quickly.
I think he was thinking alphabetically by town. Kind of backfired on him a little bit. Give me just a second. Oh, sorry. Before you get going, Travis, so a little bit more on the process. So I'll send this around. There are going to be some extras for folks in the audience, but board members for sure, make sure you get some.
And will all of this
This
be
is
linked to our minutes as well for those people that are?
what I'm passing around now is already linked, and what principals are going to send around will be linked following the meeting. So what board members are getting right now, and there'll be a few extras, is some information about types of questions. So we're doing a bit of a tuning protocol. And the opportunity for the board sort of in real time tonight, after principals make their presentation, will be to ask clarifying questions. As you can see on this document, clarifying questions are questions of fact. They're often sort of a yes, no kind of answer. They're not something that would necessarily probe a lot deeper. There's opportunities to ask more probing questions, and you can read on there what probing questions are. And that is where you'll have this form that you can submit those for us to take a look at. So what's coming around now is a form for board members to capture clarifying questions that were asked in the responses. Also a place for them to capture probing questions that come up. And there's also areas for considerations and general feedback. So this is information that we can take back as an admin team after the presentations and use that to, inform our thinking going forward.
Sorry, Patrick, I think we need multiple copies.
Oh. Because it's
For each
One
presenter.
for each presenter,
Great.
sorry. Yeah.
all right, so after you get to the end, send them back, so we can get enough copies for each presenter.
With that, I will share my screen and get Travis's presentation.
We're gonna have one of these per person.
Oh, right.
Six. I don't think there's enough to have six.
Definitely are six, six, big six. Let me do my thing.
One, two,
I don't know if it might be helpful for the audience for a little acronym. Help.
Sure. So which acronym in particular are you referencing?
Well, you know.
As we go through.
As we go through,
we're going
gotcha,
just,
yes.
You know, maybe touch base on quickly.
We are,
Jargon buster.
we like our acronyms.
And do you mind minimizing the screen?
Or at the top.
Right.
All our peoples.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
and I did it on my computer, but you probably want it up here too.
You can probably just get past the first slide. This is the beginning. So this is just talking about the SEL work, the social emotional learning work that Beeman's doing. I'll try to talk to you guys through this one. I feel awkward putting that back to you. So on the, really, I wanted to first start with like the strategic plan. Under the SEL, we have that all students are going to develop the social, emotional, physical well-being. We've been focusing on objective one. Obviously, COVID hit and kind of distracted quite a bit of it for us, but really it's about students applying the knowledge, attitudes, skills necessary to manage emotions, show empathy, maintain positive relationships, make responsible decisions, and achieve their goals. With that, I just kind of wanted to dive a little bit more into the social emotional piece. So the next slide, if you pull that one up. This has just, so this is off of our website and kind of talked a little bit more about the benefits of the SEL, and they include, and so one that I highlighted is kind of really what I've been focusing on at Beeman, reduce conduct problems and risk-taking behaviors of our students and how we can better support them, improve those decisions that they make and how they're going to go about that. All right, next slide. So really the social emotional learning provides a foundation for safe and positive learning. And we, in order to provide that foundation for safe and positive learning, us as a district obviously have been developed or adopted the framework of positive behavior intervention systems, so our PBIS. So that's one of the main things I want to talk about is our PBIS model, what we are doing at our school. Go ahead and click the next one. Before I do that, these are some of the supports that we do have in place at Beeman. We do work with CSAC. We have a school-based clinician. We have a district social worker that visits our school. We have a school counselor, a behavior assistant. We have our PBIS team, an MTSS team, and a student support team that are all around supporting our students and making sure that we're thinking about them and how we can best support them socially and emotionally. Go ahead, Patrick. So these are two things that I wanted us to wanted to share. This is the work that we did over the summer. I reached out to John Kidda, who does work also with PBIS, but he has a big focus on restorative practices and restorative circles and how to do repair work and really talk with students in either a one-on-one setting with each other, with adults, in small groups. So he came in for a pre-service for my school and gave us some really good strategies, good ideas, and how we can implement some of these restorative circles into our morning meetings. We do morning meetings every morning. So we had an opportunity to use that, and we've been using that this school year on a daily basis or when needed. And it doesn't always have to happen at morning meeting time. I mean, our students get together whenever teachers want to get to the run. So it's those opportunities right there. The other thing that we focused on is as a PBIS team, we wanted to take a look at our agreements, our expectations that we have for our school. The ones we had before were great. What we were just trying to do is add upon them and thinking about where our students, where our staff, where our community, where everybody is at this moment and kind of just build upon those. So when the next slide, when you see like the old expectations, agreements, the new ones, it's not so much that we've dropped the old ones. It's just that we've kind of evolved.
Travis, I'm thinking about Steve's comment earlier about acronyms. Can you give a 30-second explanation of what PBIS stands for and what it is?
So it's a positive behavior intervention system. So it's a way for us to recognize students in a positive way to get the positive behavior that we're looking for. And so there's different systems in place to have us have that opportunity to, one, teach our kids how to, or reinforce them too in the positive behaviors that we're looking to help them with, and different strategies to give them those opportunities to know how, or the tools in their toolbox. Really too. So our old ones were take care of yourself, others, the school and community. And our new ones kind of shaped it up a little bit the Wildcat way, but we are caring, hardworking, positive, and responsible. These didn't come about just by me saying, hey, these are the 4 I want to put in. I got a survey out to families, surveyed out to all the staff, talked to kids about this, really got a lot of feedback, and then we brought all that back to our PBIS team, and in the summer did the work to come up with these 4 that best fit our school's needs. A few things that I like about this is if you look at like the take care of yourself, others, it's kind of more of an action. I feel like it's like doing something, which is good. The new ones, the way that it's kind of worded, I feel like it's we are caring, so it kind of takes a look at you yourself inward. So for our students or for our staff, you kind of look into yourself, and I like how we kind of put the we part of that there, just because that is more, that's us. We are together. We're a community, and so just a different way for us to look at how individually we can put it back on us and figure out how we can best be better ourselves. Next. So with that, though, our agreements, it's not just as a school, but this is just one example of what it would look like. We have a classroom setting, bus, library, cafeteria, hallways, different places for that. It has all of our 4 expectations, and it just is a little bit more to share with our students what that kind of looks like if you're being caring. And these aren't the end all be all of them. It's just a few just to kind of give our students an idea. It's a talking point for our teachers to be able to share with the students. And so the implementation, I think, is a big piece of this, and it's important for you guys to hear this. We did our staff training during pre-service around our new expectations. We did a staff matrix. A matrix would be looking at all 4 of those. And as a staff, we did it with each other. How are we caring with each other as a staff? How are we hardworking, positive, and then really focused on the staff piece of the community of us, so that when we went into the classroom, the teachers also had an opportunity to do that with their students and create a matrix that way, and then put an example of one that I can share that at some point if you'd like. We also have a lot, we have a lot of visual aids out, posters like that, so students can see that. And then something we also did, just because these are our new agreements, we as a PBIS team went into each of the classrooms once a week and dived a little bit more into each of those agreements and talked about them, and did different activities, different thoughts about what they thought they were, how they worked, what questions they had, just so we could do that and hear from kindergartners to 6th graders, which are at all different spectrums of what it might mean to be caring, and all of those. So those are some of the ways that we implemented this. I think the next slide is going to show like some of the data. Yeah, the data. So I have two slides that I wanted to show about data, just to see, well, is this working? Is this something different that we're noticing? And this data, this one right here on the back of the sheet I just gave you, it's also up on the screens, obviously, but this is comparing last year and this year. Green is last year, blue is this year. And we're looking at the average referrals per day. So a referral is where if there's some type of behavior that a student has, we usually record that. And we look at how we helped support that student or what their motivation was. There's quite a bit to look through to see what it is. When did it happen? We have the way of looking up the time, day of the week, a lot of different things, just really to dive in and look at as a school, as a staff. What are we noticing? How can we make things better? What are things to celebrate? A lot of different things that nature. And so looking at this, something that I wanted to celebrate, and looking just right briefly at the graph, it's pretty obvious that this year we've done a lot better in the sense of supporting our students, where maybe they felt like they were able to use some of the tools that we were given to them, either last year or this year. and figure out a better way to support their emotional well-being. So we didn't have as many referrals. The next slide just kind of dives into that a little bit more. The top section is last year, the bottom's this year. And the second to last column just kind of looks at the referral counts. And these are, again, each one of these is when a student has done something that we have an opportunity to positively correct and make better, and something that we feel is something that's important to look at and to talk about a little bit more. And there's more that I could go there, but I won't necessarily go into that too much. But something to notice, September of last year, it was 122. This year we had 64. October, we had 127. Last year, this year, 48. And November it was 54 last year and 22 this year. So we really have drastically cut that in half. Which I do contribute to some of the work that we are doing for our students in the SEL work. And the way that we've been able to implement some of those strategies for this year. So perfect, no. Will it ever be? I don't know. But those are some of the things that we're working on at Beeman that I wanted to celebrate and recognize and share with all of you. Any questions?
So if I remember correctly, at this point, if you have clarifying questions, the probing questions we're asking you to write on the sheets, but if you have you heard something and you need to be a little clearer about what you heard from the presenter, now's the time to ask that. Bailey.
I was just curious with your graph, if they were major or minor referrals.
They're all. They're
Mixed,
both,
okay.
yeah, and then separated. Kristen?
Yeah, could you go back to the slide that shows the staffing slide? So so you mentioned, oh, okay, so the PBIS team, so are all of these people members of that team? The PBIS team, or not necessarily?
No, not necessarily, no.
Okay, and then I was just wondering, are these all positions that have always been in place at Beeman, or how many are new as a result of ESSER funding?
No, before the ESSER funding, we've had all of those. I'm not sure about the district social worker, on that one, I checked with Patrick.
That was Esther.
So, yeah.
So historically, we've had one social worker in the district that has worked almost exclusively out of Mount Abe. When there are younger siblings in the house, they sort of, when they're supporting the family, younger siblings are getting support, but it's been through Mount Abe. With ESSER funds, we added a social worker, and with the funds that I requested that we add to the budget last year, we added another, because ESSER funds are temporary, but if we could build capacity within the budget, we'd be able to sustain that, hopefully post ESSER. So we currently have 3, and we used to have 1, and one of those 3 is ESSER funded, the other 2 are in the budget.
And this is the first year we've had a district social worker at Beeman.
I can't see anybody. Oh, Kevin.
I guess hopefully this is a clarifying question. The dramatic drop, do you have a sense if there is some impact recovery from remote learning of the previous years? And then readjusting last year as opposed to this year?
I'm sure, absolutely. I think it will be.
Patrick, can you make the window bigger where people are, just in case?
So
I
I
think
can see
Liz
Liz
is
is
online.
online. I just want to see if Liz has a question.
I think she might be the other one.
I think so. Well, last we looked.
Or she can just unmute.
And if folks online have so I guess Liz, if you have a clarifying question, if you raise your electronic hand, that'll make sure that you kind of float to the top.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah.
All right, next up is Bristol, John Bracco.
School, move forward, there you go.
Oh, I have one. There's a paper copy.
Well, it's just a sheet of paper.
The same ones.
The one I'm holding up.
So I'll thank Shannon. I kind of stole her format a little bit and then also Scott 52 too, which I also think is a very good indication that there is a system in place showing that similar things are happening, keeps consistency with kids in an SDL. Consistency is also incredibly important. So while Patrick starts, there it is, the screen sharing. What we did is I went with kind of our universal. So this is kind of what's happening across the board. All kids get this type of stuff. Not going to read everything on there, but I will highlight one thing was our Kindness Rocks Peace Pathway. I did post some pictures, student created, painted rocks, positive messages on them, and then we lined our outdoor classroom with all of those messages as they went up. We have 2 strong curriculums being pushed into our classrooms as well by our guidance counselors or our counselors, Care for Kids, and We Are Elementary. We do use like the Swiss system, like, Travis just mentioned, for tracking our major and minor behaviors to help us with identifying students. We have expectations, morning meetings, second step programming. This is what we do across the entire building. If we work together and then find out that what we're doing at the universal level isn't really working, we're not seeing growth like we want it, we move into what's the targeted area. So these become, for example, we have a check-in, check-out, where a student can have immediate feedback throughout the day on how they're doing through targeting certain goals to help improve either their behavior or their focus, or even just develop relationships with staff members around the building. I also like to say that that also helps a little bit with like accountability, giving them a job, giving them something to keep track of. We also do start pulling small group instruction at this level. So it may be social skills, it could be executive functioning, really trying to support the student and make sure they have the skills in which to be successful. We also do have CSAC, or Counseling Center of Addison County, academic and SEL coaches, a really great mentoring program at Bristol as well, which I think is extremely helpful. Lots of people trained in restorative circles, peer mediation, and a lot of other stuff there as well. If those don't work, then we move into kind of the highest level, which is intensive. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about like how many approximately students we would expect to see kind of hit that level. These are the most intensive needs. Now, this does not mean that the kid needs it. It could just be the situation. So the situation results in more intensive intervention. It could be with our in-house clinicians. It could be referrals out. It could be pulling on district resources to do an FBA, or what's a functional behavior assessment. And then we're also doing just normal, like everyday assessments, like our threat assessments, self-harm. And then we're also trying to loop in our community agencies, depending on the need of the student and or the family. You can head to the back here. So I just wanted to give you like some examples. So the first one is a kind of a triangle that is for our majors. I did not grab the data because I was trying to figure out what to put on the back. So this is just this kind of cutoff is in the middle of November. So what this shows is I kind of divided it up. This is pulled from our Swiss system. And what I did is I wanted to see how many students have one or less major referrals. So that is something that would elevate it. It could be physical aggression. This isn't like, oh, they tossed a paper ball from a little too far into the thing. Well, you shouldn't do that, but that's not like causing immediate harm. That's just a quick correction. We're going to document it in case it continues. Majors are a little bit higher than that. So 84% of Bristol students have one or less major during that time period. 2 to 6 is about 11%, and then 7 or more is 5%. If we compare this against to what's considered kind of a healthy triangle, it's 80, 15, 5 at the top. So actually this triangle is slightly better, which is an indication that during this time, all of those supports are working, or at least we hope they're working. So that's kind of our glow, our highlight. It means that what we're doing at that tier 1 or that bottom level is really actually working. And that we want to make sure that we're maintaining that. Where we could put a little more, effort is how do we help students who are at the tier 2 and tier 3? What are we doing to make sure that our supports that we're putting in place are helping them come down the triangle? That they're not in that 2 to 6 or 7 or more majors. So that's what we need to look at. And then also, how can we be more proactive? So how can we really catch kids before they even go into that tier 2? So that we're really being in that proactive mindset. So I get to take no credit for this because I was here last year. So panorama data, this is student reported for grades 3 to 5. And I'll kind of explain how that also includes like the primary. So these are the transferable skills on the left. And obviously we want to get to as close to 100% as possible in each of the categories. You can see our percentages at Bristol. And again, I want to emphasize this is student reported. There's no teacher sitting there click the good button. Like this is them. And you can see that we are trending up in pretty much every category, and even the down category is only down by 1. We are beating the district average on the panorama data in every single category. And as soon as I get rid of Beeman, we'll have the highest score in all of the district in every single category. So Beeman only beat us in 1, but we're second, so we'll take it. So when I look at this, I think of things like we need to continue some universal work in emotional regulation and grit. Those are on the lower side. I'd like those to be a little bit higher. Also, too, when you have data like this, what's really good is I can take the data now and I can dive into the individual questions and we can start targeting those. So a good example would be is in supportive relationships, only 4 people said that they don't have a trusted adult in the building. Well, that's not good enough because I want every kid in the building to have a trusted adult. So we're going to dig into who are those 4 people. Was it a simple misunderstanding that they don't really understand what a trusted adult is? Or is it the fact that they don't have someone and we need to start working like, how do we get you? Who do you trust? Even if it's not in the building, we just want to know you have a trusted adult that you can go to when you need help. And then the last thing, I think supportive relationships should be 100%. So that's what we're just going to strive for. That's it.
Any clarifying questions?
Yes.
Sarah.
How is the panorama data collected? Is it like a survey? Is it
That's right.
a question? I mean, I'm assuming they're not asking them, do you have grit? And kids are like, I don't know.
There are a series of questions. Those are the
Okay.
questions that John mentioned that you can drill down to, and you can see how individual, but certainly groups of students responded to each question. So there are a number of questions that all sort of point to grit, maybe 4 questions.
Yeah, it depends. Each of them have like, I just remember supportive relationships. So there's like 4 questions. It literally just says, do you have a trusted like staff member or adult in your school building? Yes, no. Some of them are like always, sometimes, not a lot, like it's like that kind of scale too. And then it averages it together.
Is it created by inside or internal or external?
This is a national or international, Katrina's
Okay, I think we do it.
national.
And it's done at every school.
Is it new?
This is
For
one of our
us?
universal screeners for SEL. This is our 2nd year, it might be piloted 1 year, and then 2nd year that's full implementation.
The year before we had some pilot groups, yeah. Yeah, 3 times a year benchmark.
Steve.
John, when you're when you're looking at this pyramid, you mentioned that compared to
A healthy triangle.
a healthy triangle.
Yeah.
Where's the healthy triangle from?
It's usually like it's in our MTSS. It's kind of a universal educational thing where you want 80% of your student body to be in that bottom chunk, meaning that you don't have to do anything extra, whether it's academic or social, emotional, or mental health, that they're taken care of. And then as you move up the triangle, the need of the student indicates that they need more in which to be successful.
Right, I guess what I'm driving at is.
Sorry, yeah.
Is the 80-25 or whatever the
Yeah.
split was, is that a statewide comparison or a national
I think it's
comparison?
national. Yeah. Yeah, national for sure.
I was curious, the panorama data is for 3rd through 5th
Yes.
graders.
So
Um,
they do, I believe K2 is teacher reported.
Yeah.
okay, what
K2 is
about
teacher.
6th graders?
Oh, no, they're their own separate thing. No.
Well,
There we
it's
go.
also a survey.
Okay, so it's separate, okay.
Yeah, and it does indicate like what we're doing too, because it's third graders, so it's not like they show up and they're like, I don't know what,
Mhm.
maybe they don't know what grid is, but like they are still taught those things in kindergarten, so it's also an indication that what we're doing in the K2 is working and transferring up.
Any other clarifying questions from board members?
Asking what CSAC, what their interface is that clarifying or?
What do you mean interface?
Just, how do they interact with, what's like on a daily or a weekly basis, what's CSAC's?
So it depends on the school. Like I have a full-time Monday through Friday CSAC clinician in my building. And then I have a 0.4, which means that person is here Tuesdays and Fridays. So they're providing kind of similar, they're like an extension of our counts, but they are not like, they're just to see students. They don't do, like, our counselors will do guidance and they'll do lunch groups and they'll do other things. They see students. So they tend to be in that targeted and intensive realms because those are the kids that really need that consistency or need more. They're also linked into the CSAC down in Middlebury, I believe, and they can get services through them as well, and they help us provide the services.
So the FTEs across the schools range from 0.5 to. So the FTEs that are budgeted and filled are different sometimes, but budgeted are 0.5 FTEs at smaller schools up to 3 at Mount Aid for school-based clinicians. And then in addition to that relationship with CSAC, we often are attending interagency meetings where CSAC is at the table. Oftentimes DCF would be at the table as well. And then CSAC is available on call for some other things if there's a crisis response needed, et cetera. So some layers to our relationship with CSAC. Thanks.
Patrick, you just made me wonder about unfilled positions and, right now we're talking about Bristol, but in general, can you tell us what positions that fit the SEL system are unfilled, or how many, or?
I don't know that I could give you position by position,
Yeah.
but we definitely have some. And it's in some positions wear multiple hats and have roles. So I'm thinking about, we have unfilled special educator positions, and I would say that has an impact on the SEL support side of things. We have some school-based clinician positions that are not filled. We have support staff positions that are not filled.
School-based clinicians are through CSAC.
School-based
Or are-
clinicians are through CSAC,
Yeah.
yes. We have a couple of SEL coaches for special education positions that are unfilled. That has an impact on SEL. Might be missing some, but those are the ones that are coming to mind.
Who's in charge of hiring the school-based clinicians? Is it CSAC or us?
CSAC in partnership with us, but they're the employer, so they
Okay.
ultimately are the ones
Contract with them.
responsible.
but they-
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Lincoln, all right.
That comes in that empty chair.
Yes.
I don't have anything for you to look at on the screen.
Thank you, Travis and John, for laying such good groundwork and foundation, because I'm just gonna tell some stories and give some examples of how social emotional support looks in Lincoln. And I know that these kinds of examples are things that happen across all our schools, just in different ways. So the foundation is really to provide opportunities and environment for students to contribute and to belong to their school community and larger community. And we do this in a number of different ways. And as Patrick said at the beginning, there's both successes and challenges, and often the successes really grow out of challenges. So there are things that we plan for and put in place, but then there are also times that we really just need to respond to whatever a student or a cohort of students presents to us. And that's where some of the challenge for us comes in. So one of the things that we've revived after COVID is called Common Morning Meeting. And in elementary schools, it's typical for all classrooms to have a morning meeting first thing in the day and establish the routines of the day, have a greeting, have an activity, and just really have a time to establish the community rapport. What we're doing this year, as we did before COVID, is we have one morning a week where we have multi-age morning meetings. So the whole school is mixed up into multi-age groups and is led by the same adult every week. So on Wednesdays, all kids go to their common morning meeting and a group of teachers writes the lessons. So the whole school community is receiving the same common morning meeting once a week. So we'll focus on themes like gratitude or disability or I don't know what else, and any sort of theme that we just want to cover throughout the whole school. And it's an opportunity for students to be out of their own peer group and develop relationships with students of different ages. And it's also an opportunity for students to develop a relationship with another person who isn't their classroom teacher, but they see on a regular basis. So that's something that we put in place. There are other times when we're really responding to challenging situations. So we have a cohort of students this year that has been challenging for every adult across every setting, every day. We were really getting kind of worn down by this cohort. And so one of the things that we decided to do was write them cards of gratitude. Can someone get my water bottle out of my bag that's on that? That's back there, thank you. I think just water will do it, but what kind? Thank you very much. I make this all over the school and children know it's mine and deliver it. So one of the things that happens as we get worn down by people's behavior is that, you know, for me anyway, I start feeling like I don't really want to be around those people and I can't remember what I really liked about them. So we decided that we would write cards to each student. And one of the staff members designed, you know, a personalized card, the cover. And then at a staff meeting, and then just over the course of a week, we left the cards out so that each student would receive a card that had 5 or 6 or 7 adults commenting on them. And then we mailed them over Thanksgiving break. And it was really just a way, one, for us to sort of repair our own attitude towards the students, but also as a way for students to really understand that we see them. And even if sometimes we get a little grouchy with them, we really do see their uniqueness and their beauty And it also really provided adults an opportunity to reframe some student behavior. So a student who you might think of as stubborn then becomes someone who is advocating for themselves. So we did that. Part of the repair in the class was that we asked students who had been really had some pretty egregious mistaken behavior that they contributed back to the community. And then that was so successful that we made it an expectation of all the students in that cohort. So now we have a rotation of students contributing across the school in different settings every day. I'm glad that John brought up the trusted adult aspect of Panorama, because we found that on our survey, there were really it was a large handful of students. I know that's not really quantifiable, but you can picture that. A large handful of students who said they didn't have a trusted adult in the school. And it was really surprising because that's not typical. So what we've decided to do is go class to class and ask students, do you have a trusted adult? Name the trusted adult, anywhere from 1 to 3. And then if students don't have one, then that's a separate kind of work that we have to do, similar to what John alluded to. We're going to dig a little bit deeper. But what we'll do when we have all the students who have identified trusted adults is, so anyone who picked Patrick as a trusted adult, Patrick would get a list of those students. Classroom teachers will get the list of all of their students. And same with the guidance counselor, she'll have all of them, and I would have the complete list. And we've already started, and there have just been some really lovely unexpected things, like a kindergartner picked the 6th grade teacher who happens to be his common morning meeting leader. So here's this kindergartner who sees this teacher once a week, picked him. You know, someone else picked the music teacher, and lots of people picked the nurse because, you know, cough drops. And I think I just want to mention one other thing that really supports the intergenerational relationships that we have in our school, and that is the mentoring program. And I know that all of our schools have it, and we have about 30% of our students matched now with a mentor, and it's really an incredibly powerful way of maintaining healthy relationships across generations. Good thing I'm done because I can't really talk. But I'm happy to take questions.
Any clarifying questions for Tori? Thank you, Tori.
Thank you.
Moncton is up next, like Lansing.
Hello, all right, let me get right next to you here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk SEL. I do want to start as we kind of kick it off. SEL is something that's done all day long in every classroom. It's not just a program, it's kind of a methodology, so to speak. So an example would be at Moncton, every single day. I agree, unless I have a meeting or something, but I would say, 95% of the day, I am the first person those kids see when they enter the building. I hold the door, I greet them by name. They come in, all their teachers are standing outside their classroom and greet the kids by name, give them a handshake, a fist bump, a hug, kind of whatever, before they enter the building, right? And that's just one of many SEL practices that schools do to make kids feel warm and comfortable and loved as they enter school. Mike's kind of story today will be about what we do to take a peek at our data to say like, hey man, like who needs a little extra support? Using kind of John's terminology today, who needs that tier 2 support? And I'll kind of show you how we do that today and some of the screening tools that we use to figure that out. So whenever you're ready. This is just from a program called Close Gap we're going to talk about, but I thought it was good stuff. 49%, 50% of American youth will have a diagnosable mental illness at some point before they're 18. This is it's an American stat of the USA. 50% of all lifetime cases of mental illness begin by age 14 and 75% by 24. 46% of kids in the United States have experienced at least one traumatic event. So I see that, I think to myself, boy, if we can catch it as early as possible and give them as much support as we can, and there's a limit to our support, right? But as much as we can, as much arm wrap around as we can, hopefully we can help them out. So we're ready for the next one, sir. So hit a bunch of them. One more, and one more. And that's it. Okay, cool. So this this is my data, right? So the top one is, you can't see it, the MAUSD board talking is in the way, but it says, I think it says average or minors, average. Good. So this is average referrals per day per month for the last 5 years. And the bottom one is majors. My school is lucky. We have very little majors. And we've had 2 this year. We had 2 in November. Our average has gone steadily down, but this year, which is the silver one, it's gone up a little bit, which is a nice prompting for this story, right? So we take a look at our data and we say, gosh, our average referrals per day has gone up compared to the last 3 years. What's going on there? So let's go to the next one, Mr. Reen. And so we drill down, hit it again. It's like the same thing, one more time, and then again. So we figure out the needs and challenges, right? So what's going on? That's our take. Well, you can see by the green graph, that's average referrals per day. It's majors and minors, that K1 and grade 5 are clearly the high. The bottom right-hand graph is actual students. There's by their student number, so you don't know who they are. But you can tell the bottom 2, I have one kid who has 27% of all my majors and minors by one kid, and then I have 2 other kids who account for the other, 22%. So that's half of my referrals are through 3 kids, right? So when you see data like that, you say to yourself, well, golly, what's going on? Let's figure out what's happening. Why does my one kid have 27% of my minors and majors? Why do 2 other kids have 11%? That's half the school. What do you do, right? So, Ash, can go to the next one, please. So, yeah, and again, so yeah, there you go.
Oh, did I go too many that time?
That's good. No, you get one more sport. You get your nail on it. Okay, so here are a bunch of things we do at our school. That the other schools do as well. The closed gap one is a Moncton only thing, but we're going to talk about it in depth here because I like it. But we do all sorts of stuff. Panorama, John talked about, we do the same one too, right? We have data there as well. Morning meeting is responsive classroom. The morning meeting book is something that teachers, I'm sure you all were trained in. If you've been here a while, you're all trained in responsive classroom a long time ago. Morning meeting book is kind of a guide through that program that I've allocated 30 minutes of morning. It's non-instructional time. It is morning meeting, family time, to greet and meet and go and get ready. And it's cute. Kids, they introduce themselves, all these different ways to do it. It's fun. Kelso's Choice, it's kind of the one with frogs. That's a guidance program talking about feelings and if the problem's big or small and how to take on a challenge. CSAC is the one on the lower left hand. We have a 0.6, a 3-day week CSAC clinician. ESSER funds gave us a half a day, so a 0.5 addition to that. That was great. And then of course we have a 0.8 counselor at our school, and she does so much at our school. So those are kind of some of our big ways to support kids. But we're gonna move forward. Thank you. We're gonna talk about closed gap. Closed gap is a really cool feeling. I brought this computer because this actually describes it well. So closed gap is a universal screener that students in grades 3 through 6 complete every single morning. My teachers, it drives them nuts because every day before they do that morning meeting, kids jump on to eat food, right? Then they jump on and then they got to do their closed gap. But it's important in my mind because it's a universal screener that asks kids to answer a bunch of basic questions, right? It says, how are you feeling? Are your basic needs met? That's food, belonging, safety. Are they met? Do you need or want to talk to an adult? Their answers indicate a message. If they're like, yeah, I do, their message gets sent out to 3 trusted adults. One is their teacher, one is the counselor, and the other one is our behavior support person. It doesn't go to me, it goes to them. If they're flagged, we'll talk about that, what happens. And then if not, if they aren't, they also have a bunch of there's like a really small bank of activities kids can do to help them feel better, whether it's deep breathing or all sorts of stuff. So they can kind of dig into that through closed gap. When that finishes, they then do their morning meeting. But it's kind of a fun screener. I'll show you more about it. Next slide. So how it works, students complete a daily check-in, educators get all the info they need, and then kids connect with an adult if they feel like it's needed, or they choose from a library of self-guided activities. Next slide, please. So these two more clicks, 1 and 2. Yeah, so these are 3 examples of like self-guided activities, right? 3 belly rest, comes to the event, there's like a write it out thing. It all depends what the kid like wants to do to help them self-regulate. Next slide. So this is like an example of what you could see from close. It's very basic, right? But you can tell, it's hard to tell here, but like, that's green, yellow, and then we have like a red, right? And so like red is concerning, yellow is kind of in the middle, green is awesome, right? But if a kid flags red, we are on it. Our counselors go visit that kid or pull them in. Maybe the behaviorist does it, or maybe the teacher, kind of depending on the frequency, the certain kid, etc. If they flag a lot, we learn from that kid. We do more. We kind of go from there. If they need more, we give them more. But this is something that we do every day to help us give them some additional support if they need it. Ultimately, the goal is for them to give themselves self-support, right? Wouldn't it be great if they just eat food and we're good to go? Hopefully one day that's the idea, right? To give them some self-tools, but we know they're not always ready for that. So this is a way we like work with them and figure out who needs additional support. Like John talked about and everybody else, if they need a lot of support, we kind of go through those other angles to give them that tier 2 and or tier 3 support. The kid is flagging all the time. There's probably a big issue. We figure it out, we solve it, maybe, or we try to solve it, and we give them support they need. So next slide, please. This is another tool we use. This is my counselor, Ms. Tatlock, she's the best. She made from COVID, she made like a virtual relaxed calming room. That's pretty cool, right? Kids use that too. And there's some online computer tools that kids can use, and their peers don't know they're doing it. It's nice and it's private. And it's just, again, another kind of unique support that we have. So yeah, one more slide, I think. Yeah, one more. Yeah, I know, 1, 2, again. So I had this dramatic idea when I was presenting my brain. So just, this is the last slide, but just kind of going back to that, right? So like, if you look at my silver, these guys, these 3, right? Boom, 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 boom. They're like, so this is last year, right? This is this year. It's higher, it's joining. So we got to figure it out in my school. And we're hoping some of these tools can help us do that. We have identified the
Recording in progress.
Perspective, it's up to the individual school teachers.
Yeah, I like it for the obvious benefits of daily screening. It is a challenge, honestly, right? Like it is another thing. It's not quick. I mean, it's quick-ish, but you got to open the computer, you got to get them out. You know, there's a lot happening. So there is certainly some pushback and a kind of battle I fight for every year. But I think the benefits kind of outweigh the annoyance, I guess, sometimes of going through the process.
And then I had one other question, if no one else does. My theme of asking about positions and ESSER funding. You said you have a 0.6 CSAC person?
Yeah, so I'll answer your question. So ESSER funding.
Do you know what it is?
What's that?
Do you know what my question is?
Well, I can tell you who the two of my funded.
Well, I guess I was just wondering because I thought I heard you say 0.5 was added through ESSER. So did you have 0.1 before?
It was point. I it was 0.1. It was half a day.
Okay.
I meant 0.05 in my brain, which is also not true. So I had a 2.5 day week. Think this way. I had a 2.5 day week position. ESSER bumped it up to 3 days a week. So I got a half a day month. Like Travis and I split, like a social worker, who also works at the Gray Building too. So this new social worker kind of dances between the Gray Building, Beaman and then Moncton too. And
Okay.
What's the gray building?
It's at Mount Airy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that amounts to district-wide, like a full-time person, you guys there.
Yeah, so my clinician is only at Moncton, and she's just 3 days a week.
Oh,
And then,
okay.
right, so that's it. And then this social worker,
The
this
social
this
worker.
lovely social worker, he is a full-time human, but he kind of bounces between 3 spots.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Right. Mount Abe is up next. Shannon and Aaron, or just Shannon? I see Aaron sitting. Okay, right.
Did give the option. Which section do you want to do? I didn't know that too, but I don't think we have to put it up. I think it's.
It'll be easier for folks online to see, I guess.
I'm only passing out because I don't get to do that much anymore, so. And I really need my. They go mine.
Sure. So John stole my thunder. So actually, we were working on this. We thought we were going to be kind of like presenting together initially. So we actually have a lot of the same ideas. So a lot of this I'll just kind of try to answer preemptively some of the questions that have come up. Things are pretty similar, I think, for our universal targeted and intensive levels of support for social emotional learning. We don't have morning meeting, we have advisory. That includes regular circles and community building. This year, something new that we added was the second step programming for the middle school, which is something that some or all of the elementary schools do. That's been really successful. It helps build social skills for students and work through a number of really relevant issues and topics to students today. We have 4 school counselors. We added a middle school counselor this year, which has been huge, which has been wonderful. And we have 2 high school counselors, should be 3. We couldn't hire the 3rd. And our school counselors meet with each kid once or twice a year as kind of a universal thing. They follow what's called the ASCA model for instruction, which is the American School Counselor Association, and they have like a whole curriculum of different areas that they cover with students. So we follow that model. We also have restorative processes at varying levels, the panorama survey. If you had a student here or you've been walking around, you see that we use HEART as kind of the quick acronym of what our school expectations are, meaning you're here, you're engaged, you're appropriate, you're responsible, and you're timely, and we try to connect everything back to that. And also new this year at a universal level for middle school is the Club Dear Lead program through Expanded Learning through ELP, which has a really unique set of offerings for kids and has been capturing students who maybe they're not an athlete, maybe they're not going out for the musical, but they can find something that's of interest for them, or it's in between seasons or in between events. And it's another way to get them engaged with school, working with their peers in a very different way, as they tend to be pretty eclectic groups of kids that come together, which is really fun to see. At the targeted level, we also have student support plans. We utilize a check-in, check-out called PICO. That's part of the positive behavior intervention, PBIS. For students who kind of keep showing up on our Swiss data, or that teachers report, they really have a hard time getting started in the morning. It's like a person that they go to in the morning, they check in, and then the teacher kind of fills out some comments each class on how the student is doing. And then there's a checkout at the end to see, like, how did you do today? And then that information is communicated home.
We also work with the Counseling Center of Addison County. We have 2 school-based clinicians, should be free. Bailey, your question about, like, they do the hiring, but they bring finalist candidates here to interview, to see, like, do you feel like this is gonna be a fit? We had a wonderful candidate over the summer, was an art therapist, coming from out of state, couldn't find housing, didn't move. We utilize at the targeted level restorative circles if there has been an event in a classroom that requires some level of processing or an issue with a group of kids. We'll circle them up. It's a process that they're familiar with and they're comfortable with, as a way to get folks talking and talking about how something impacted them, and then kind of where do we go from here. The Counseling Center of Addison County has also recently started some social skill circles. There's a boys group and a girls group, and they partner with the Restorative Justice, the Balance and Restorative Justice Center of Addison County, to have these social groups. And those just started, and they'll run for about 6 weeks, and then they'll get another group of kids with similar needs so that they can come together and work on their skill building, as well as how they're interacting with each other socially to build those skills as well. At the intensive level, we've had a school social worker, and now we have access to additional social workers. We look at outside programming to provide alternative support for students. We are seeing, I feel like this year more than in the past, particularly upper class students who are struggling to stay engaged for the remainder of their day. They really want to just come and do kind of the bare minimum of what's required, but maybe they're missing an elective here or there. So we try to find out, like, what are you interested in, and have them like get a job or an internship and do some work-based learning, something like that, that still keeps them connected to school and learning, and is also letting them have a foot out the door and try something out, or be able to demonstrate their transferable skills through a job. You know, like the other schools, we have behavior plans and safety plans. We do functional behavior assessments when we need more information on a student. All of our school counselors have been trained in how to do a threat or risk assessment. We will refer out to community agencies as necessary, as well as self-harm and suicide screenings, which sadly happen every day. This year, we are really utilizing our multi-tiered system of support process for looking at data and identifying students who need more than just the universal, what everybody's getting. And then we put in some targeted supports, and then if they need more, they'll get some intensive supports. And one thing that we've been really stressing and focusing on is it's not, once you start to move up the pyramid, and then when you move back down, one doesn't go away. So if you're receiving targeted interventions of any kind, like let's say you're doing that check-in, check-out with someone in the morning and the afternoon, you're still benefiting from all these universal things that are happening that all kids have access to. Likewise, if you go to the intensive level, you're still benefiting from some targeted supports as well as the universal supports, all to help bring you back down the pyramid. And so this is the first year that we have had a very clear process and team for the middle and the high school. And so we look at both SEL needs and academic needs through that process. We try to be as data-driven as possible. We look at referrals from teachers, school counselors, etc. So on the back, just kind of a quick comparison of our major referrals. So the blue line being last year, 2021, over September, October, November, and the red line being this year. You can see quite a significant drop, which has been refreshing, to say the least. And I think it's attributed to any number of things. I think that we are really utilizing our transferable skills that have social emotional learning competencies in there, that are from program called Castle, which is linked to Panorama. It all ties back. So I think it's that. I think it's really utilizing the data and providing supports when kids are struggling. I think it is the addition of some positions that have really kind of helped curb some of those major behaviors that we were seeing. And I would note that on this graph, if we took out, like, we consider if you skip a class multiple times, 3 times, that's major. That's 3 days of instruction that you've missed out on, that's major. If you were to take that away, that number would be even less. So though that major category encompasses a lot, not just really egregious externalizing behaviors. So I think that is important to note. Also just included kind of a snapshot of our Panorama data from this fall and kind of gave you the categories of grit, self-management, social awareness, classroom effort, and emotional regulation. Kids self-assess, and the questions aren't labeled as these categories. It's just like Patrick said, it's like a number of questions and then kind of like a Likert scale. So what we're seeing here on this sort of thermometer graph is students that are reporting in that dark green that all of these areas are strengths for them. And it's not just one question, it's multiple questions so that that information is a little more reliable. In the middle school, 41% that identified that they had many strengths, 24% reported some strengths, and 10% reported no strengths. So we have work to do on that 34% to make sure that everybody is identifying some strengths and really going towards reporting many and possibly all strengths, but we also know that no one's perfect. And similar data in the high school as well. I am hoping that we see an increase in a lot of these areas when we give this again, because teachers are teaching and assessing the transferable skills and working on building relationships and helping students manage their behaviors in class.
Any clarifying questions for Shannon?
Krista, you want to know if ESSER funded?
Well, I actually was wondering, you said couldn't hire a third. Does that mean you couldn't fill?
Unfilled.
Okay.
Unfilled. We also had money for ESSER money for a second social emotional learning interventionist, which also went unfilled. So then I did sort of a parallel pursuit for a while, looking for a social emotional learning interventionist or behavior assistant that could kind of focus on the same things and divvy up what our social emotional learning interventionist is doing and have her work with more intensive students and the behavior assistant work on more of the targeted plans, but we weren't able to fill that either.
This isn't a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead there.
Yeah, I don't know. This might be on the edge of a probing question, so I don't feel free to pass. What besides like some of the positions and a lot of the pieces, is there any major difference between last year and this year for like systems or supports that you're doing? Or do you think it's actually just like a shift of?
I think
like
it's a lot. I think, you know, in addition to Erin and Lucy now as part of our behavior team, we have 2 EAs that are like a utility position that they'll sub in classes, cover phones in the office, and when they don't have a place to be, they are in the halls, responding to classrooms, helping cover lunch duties and breakfast, things like that. So they're sometimes part of our behavior team. So the second step is new. Deer Leap is new. We're using restorative processes at all levels much more this year than we have in the past. Some of the social groups are new.
And last year, I mean, is there been a targeted age bracket, or is that now like where the majors are occurring, or is it feel just more even across the board?
I wouldn't say it's more even.
Okay.
First of all, I don't think you can compare middle school, high school,
No.
because middle school is its own thing.
Yeah.
And the behaviors are often much different than you see
Right.
in the high school. We also did change some things systemically to help with what we were seeing as pretty typical behaviors with middle school students. E.g. their cell phones.
Right.
And keeping their cell phones away. So we tried this year, you get your cell phone at break and for lunch, but if we see it once, you lose it for the day, which means you don't get it for break or lunch. That's helped. And you made me think of something else. There was something else you asked.
It was just an age thing.
Oh, yeah, and then, in the high school, ninth and 10th grade, probably pretty close. Pretty close to referrals.
I was just thinking about the, it's not really a question, but it's more just noting about the partnership with Mountain Health. And I mean, that's new.
Yeah,
I would imagine that will lend, and I don't know if everybody on the board or in the audience knows.
yeah, so, they really just started with appointments before Thanksgiving, so like beginning of November. So, once a week, Mountain Health comes, they have like this big van, that's like an exam room and does all these things. And so kids can, or families sign up for students to have their wellness check, or they have a poll and the family can't get them somewhere. They're working to, bring in a dentist as well as, a counselor. So that would increase some capacity for, some external counseling service that we encourage families to seek if we don't have any slots with our school-based clinicians. CSAC gets at capacity. A lot of the private practices are at capacity, so that would be a huge help as well. And accessible.
So you mentioned second step and that other schools were using that as well. Can you dive into that for just a second? What is second step and how does that work?
So it is a program, it's like a curriculum that students do in advisory, and it's topic based, and it goes through, like, there could be a little video or a reading, and then there are just discussion questions and topics to cover. So for example, there might be one around bullying. They just did one a couple weeks ago on sexual harassment, identity, transition. So thinking about seventh graders coming to eighth graders, our teams shuffling up. So they're just topics that they then kind of focus in on to have conversation and answer questions, kind of alleviate concerns, that kind of thing. It's like, it's a proactive approach to try to minimize things that could come, behaviors that we may see.
Thanks.
In the elementary schools, it's typically, the curriculum is delivered by guidance counselors typically.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Shannon.
All right, Adora's up next, the closer. Robinson.
Will it mess up the Zoom if I go back to where Tori was?
No.
No, I think that's a good spot, actually.
Okay, yeah, the only thing is like, you gotta really shout because.
Project.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stand up, so that,
Oh.
I'm gonna stay standing, but
Is there anything you want me to pull up, Adora, or?
nope, I don't have any visuals. I have my own, but I don't have them for you, which is probably a good thing because they would be 90% redundant if I did. So, I mean, that's the good news, is that together we develop these things in various teams. And we have a lot of uniformity across the district, I think, in terms of these practices. There are some individual differences, and what I'm going to share with you is something more unique, I think, to Robinson, but the steps involved and even the outcomes involved are very similar to what you've heard. And like the other schools, I mean, you've seen graph after graph of schools that are seeing a decline in problematic behaviors, and that's true also in Robinson. I think it'd be interesting now that you've seen a number of different kinds of data. You know, you can ask us for data that is more apples to apples across schools. I think that could be interesting. But I will tell you that, well, I'll just tell a little story about the changes we've made this year, because we have made some significant changes and we're proud of them at Robinson. It's been very long in coming. Last year in November, we looked at some Swiss data, that's the PBIS generated data based on office referrals for behavior. So we looked at our Swiss data in November. And one thing that we saw there that we thought could use significant improvement was that there were a lot of students who were coming out of class because of problematic behaviors. And that the motivation for that when you put your report into Swiss, you have to choose a student motivation for their behavior. Do your best to identify the function, what they call the function of the behavior. So what we found is that a lot of our kids were coming out of class because of task avoidance. Okay, that's a problem. You don't want them to avoid the task. You don't want them to be out of the classroom either. So we had kids who were coming to our behavior office, which we call the Robin's Nest, because we're Robins and everything at Robinson is about Robins. So we had kids coming to the Robin's Nest to avoid often math or writing. Those are the two big ones. So they would come to the Robin's Nest and we would work with them in various ways and get them back into class. And then we would struggle with having them make up what they missed. They missed instruction, they missed class cohesion time, they missed all kinds of little interactions that they can never get back. And they missed academic work and learning. So we struggled with trying to do some after school time, which we didn't really have the staff for that. And then the family struggled with transportation if their kid didn't ride the bus, et cetera. So that never really panned out. And we tried to figure out ways to tuck additional learning into different spaces within the school day, but there really isn't much time. We use our time for learning. So we were struggling with this problem of students avoiding tasks, and we sat down as a faculty on one of our data days, and that was instituted last year, that once a month we look at this universal data. We were looking at that and we said, okay, we're going to try to approach that. We're going to try to bring down this number of kids who are avoiding tasks. And we're going to do that. We came up with two ways. One was we thought we'll talk to the kids about it. We're going to teach them the term task avoidance. We're going to talk about how everyone in the world avoids tasks they don't like and what adults do to overcome that impulse, right? We don't just hide under the desk. I mean, maybe some of us do some of the time. But for the most part, we have ways that we get ourselves to do tasks that we don't particularly like. And so we took some ownership of, are there ways that we can make the tasks more appealing or to reduce the stress level of some of these tasks? So there are many things that we as educators do to address that, but we also thought we wanted to engage the kids in solving this problem as well. So we talked from kindergarten through 6th grade, we talked to them about task avoidance. We taught them the words, and we generated all kinds of ideas about how to get yourself to do things that are daunting or hard or unpalatable or whatever. That's one thing we did. We also each decided to choose a kid that we knew was avoiding tasks, that we knew that was a pattern for, and just really consider that individual kid and figure out what we could do to solve that problem for that kid or to address the problem. So then we came back about 6 weeks later. We had some big holidays and whatnot. In January, we came back and looked at our Swiss data again, specifically regarding task avoidance. And we found that we'd improved that number by about 15%. So modest incremental change. It wasn't a big eureka, no one's avoiding any task anymore, but it was enough improvement that we considered it to be a result of this work. And not only that, but we had now a vocabulary with which to talk to kids about this behavior. And that in and of itself was helpful. So then we kept working on that and decided, let's bring it down another 10%, another 10%. Meanwhile, we got to April and we had the panorama screener, which you've heard a lot about tonight. And another data point came up that really irked us, which was that we got a 43% response to the very specific question about how invested in you, or how hard are you working on participating in class discussion. And 43% of the kids said that they were really trying to participate in class discussion. Well, that was an abysmal number to us. And so we talked about that in a number of ways as well in a data meeting. And one of the things that fortunately a couple of our staff members had done was to go get trained in a particular model of student engagement. And they came back and they shared what they had learned. And I just have one, and I can certainly share it with you in another form if you would like. But what they came to us with as a staff was they showed us this spectrum. You can see the colors from, and it's a way for students to gauge their own engagement from disruption to driving their education. And there are a bunch of different spots in between. So kids can look at this, and now they do look at this in our school. And they say, okay, at the beginning of class, where am I in this? Do I feel like disrupting this class right now? Like I'm already out. I'm not even in, and I'm already out of here. Or, am I really wanting to go for it today? And all things in between. So I'm really interested in this spot here, which is greenish and yellowish here, which is like, I'm complying, I'm answering a question if asked, I'm watching, I'm listening, but I'm not driving my education. And most of our kids are actually here. So what we're doing now, this is one of the changes we've made, is we're talking about this also with kids and having them think about where they start in class and how can they move not to here, because someone who's starting here is not going to move here. But how do we move here to the adjacent? Okay, so if I'm in a state of mind to disrupt this class and get out of here, how could I move to withdrawing? So maybe I'm not going to participate, but I'm going to sit here and listen. Okay, withdrawing doesn't sound great, but it's a lot better than hurting someone, breaking something, yelling something, the alternatives. So that's something we worked on there, is student engagement in those ways. Then we came together and we started to talk about that with the kids last spring as well. So then we decided to come together as a working group. Our PBAS team came together for 2 days in August. And this was ESSER funded, before you asked you to tell you ESSER funded. So 6 of us got together, a classroom teacher, a couple of behavior folks, Bill Huggett, who is our PBIS coordinator district-wide, and our guidance counselor and I got together at someone's house for 2 days, and we worked on making some changes. And these are what's really exciting. So we read a couple of articles together. One of the articles talked about the mindset that we should have as we're walking toward a classroom that we've been summoned to because there's an agitated student inside. Okay, so as we're walking down the hall, what mindset are we creating for ourselves to support that classroom? And it used to be a Robinson, and in many schools, that the idea was to walk there planning, how am I going to get that kid out of there? Honestly, because the teacher is wanting the disruption to end so the teacher can continue to teach. And the kids, there might be other kids in there who are nervous, etc. So this article and the resulting discussion was about how do we get in there? How do we prepare ourselves to support the classroom as a whole, to support the adult or adults in the room and the child who's agitated? So it's a classroom community. How do we support the group as a whole? So the other article we read is about how to talk to kids about that. So as the year is beginning, how to have that conversation maybe on day 1 or day 2 to say, look, we're going to be together 7 hours a day for the next 8 months. We're essentially, it is essentially a family situation. You're together for many, many hours. Let's not pretend we're always going to get along and say, everyone be nice. There are people who are going to get upset. There are people who are going to be angry. There are going to be tragedies that happen this year, etc. So how are we going to support each other through that? So how do we engage the kids to talk about that from the beginning? And how do we plan for that as a classroom community? So we read that and we talked about that. And from those conversations, we decided to make some significant changes. They might sound small, but they've had a big effect. A couple things in particular. One is we had a step system where if kids were doing something, some kind of behavior that was disruptive or undesirable, they'd be given a friendly reminder. Then they'd be asked to sit in a take a break chair, the designated chair in the room. Then step 3 was to go to the buddy room, which was to sit in their take a break chair in a different classroom, the classroom next door. And then the fourth one was, okay, now it's time for the robin's nest. You're going to go to the robin's nest. The problem there, as we had this conversation, was steps 3 and 4 sent the kids away. It was exclusionary. They lost track of what was going on in class. They lost learning, and they lost their connection to their community. So we decided, let's try something different. Let's stick with the 4 steps. But when we get to step 3, well, so same thing, friendly reminder, take a break. In the take a break step, the kids come back when they feel they're ready. But the 3rd step we decided was they're going to take a break again, but this time the teacher's going to decide when they come back. So they're still in the room. They still could be listening. They still could be following the instruction. They still could be horsing around, trying to get some attention, or they still could be quite upset. But they're still in the room. They're still part of the classroom community. Then step 4, the classroom teacher calls the robin's nest, asks for a behavior support person who then comes into the classroom, assesses the situation using that approach as they're walking toward, okay, how am I going to support this classroom community? Looks at the teacher, looks at the rest of the group, not just focused on this problematic kid, but really what are the needs of the room right now? And the needs of the room might be for the teacher to take a break, actually. That could happen. Or if they end up interacting, and most likely they will end up interacting directly with that child, but helping them stay in the room. And we talked about this with the kids before we made this change. And we told them, look, you guys are used to, if someone's upset or doing something disruptive or disrespectful, they're going to come out. We're going to work to keep you in. And the same people who used to take you out are going to work to keep you in. And the kids were really on board with that. The kids who popped out of class the most were the most on board with staying in. They really, really have turned around. So that's been very successful. The other smaller thing that we've done, well, 2 other things quickly. One smaller thing we've done is we've instituted something called working lunch. So if someone is avoiding their work and we feel that they need to be accountable for making up that work, they're going to be assigned to working lunch. It means they're going to a room with an adult, kind of like a little study hall lunch. They eat their lunch first and then they get their work done. And in some cases, we find out that they really can't do their work, that they really need some academic support. Or there's some other reason, there are a few kids for whom working lunch isn't the right match, but it gives us a closer look at that kid and what's going on with them. And in most cases, they just do their work and they stop horsing around. And then the other thing we're really working on, which you've heard about more from other principals here, you've had quite the parade of principals tonight, and I'm almost done. But the other thing is restorative practices. And we have some classes, not all, but we're working on it. Some classes are doing a really nice job having meetings with their class to problem solve problems of the classroom. And they're developing skills to do that in some really nice ways. Both the adults and the kids are developing skills to be able to create restoration for problems that they can solve together as a group, or if an individual does something that hurts someone else or hurts the school, there's repair work to be done. And the kids are getting more and more used to repairing any damage that they caused. And sometimes adults have also done some repair work. So this whole idea that adults are a partner in the behavior of the child, that there are conversations about, okay, this is what the kid did, but what happened with the adult also. And when the behavior support person comes into the room, they're looking at the adults as well. So at the beginning of the year, during the staff pre-service, when I was talking to what was new this year, one of the things I said to the staff at Robinson was, look, we are all living together for a year. All kinds of things are going to happen. There are going to be times when you as an adult are agitated, upset, etc., or burnt out or whatever. And I want you to know that you can also get on the walkie-talkie and call support, and we'll come to the classroom. And if the support you need is 5 minutes out of the classroom, that's what we'll do. And we've done it a few times. But just to know that that is kind of escape valve is there, I think it's very helpful for the staff. It's a way of talking with each other that we haven't had before. So it's just another example of how we're trying to look holistically at what are the needs, what are the dynamics that create these behaviors to start with, and then what's the group community solution to those.
Any clarifying questions for Dora?
Thank you, Dora.
Thanks, Dora.
Yeah, you have to go that way. That was a little tight unless you want to climb the table.
Oh, Liz, your hand up, sorry.
Oh, your question?
Just popped up.
Okay, let's.
Oh, not so much a question as just a thank you. Thank you so much. It's been really helpful to listen to everything you just said and all the principals, of course. And I guess I just am feeling hopeful that the strengths that different principals bring to their schools and in ways to solve problems like you just went through with us, that those can be shared across schools sometimes.
Thanks, Liz. All right, Patrick, so now we have all our little notes, and originally there was another plan for the protocol. So if board members have probing questions, they have their sheets, and what's your plan?
I'll collect them.
You will collect them. All right, and at the beginning of this, we mentioned that if community members have probing questions, they could message their board members. What are we gonna do with the community member questions?
I think they'll flow through board members and they can come to me as well.
Okay.
I'll just be the point person for all of it.
So
We can
if-
see you can-
Okay, yeah, so if you get
right now?
questions, it might be later, it might be, the end of the week. If you get probing questions about the presentation, it's recorded as people watch it. And they might have some questions and they send them off to you. If you'll forward them on to me, and I'll put them in a list and forward them all to Patrick and the team. Okay. All right,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you all for joining us.
So I have one thought.
Sure.
So I think we covered what we intended to cover here.
Yeah.
One thing that wasn't covered was the in the moment. So crisis team versus PBIS systems. What happens when all of our plans break down, as they're bound to eventually, and we have to pick up the ball like on Friday. I think we talked a little bit about this the last time we went through this. What was the crisis protocol? I don't know if it might be worth just kind of talking through that and the philosophy behind it.
Yeah, I think it's the hard part with that is it's circumstantial. Each
And I know
crisis
it's not
brings about its.
necessarily SEL curriculum sort of update. It's more of a behavior plan update sort of thing. But
Yeah, the practice is, and Dora sort of mentioned to it, a call is made for help, a team responds. Could be an individual, could be more than one individual, but sort of there's a response. And then those folks that respond kind of read the situation and respond in the way that seems appropriate given the situation. I think that's what's hard, that it isn't necessarily all that procedural, except make the call, there's a response, and then the response is gauged by what is observed.
right, and I think the last time we went through this, we sort of, one of the philosophical approaches was that as much as we could, we try to keep the student engaged in the classroom. And then there's levels of tolerance for that, obviously, and what the next steps are if that can't be maintained. And I don't know if it's just appropriate time to sort of walk through what that is.
So de-escalation is the first effort made. If de-escalation is unsuccessful, the other two options become either remove the other students from the space to make it safe, or as a last resort, restrain the student that is being unsafe. That's sort of when de-escalation doesn't work, those become the options. And again, it's sort of reading the situation as to which option makes the most sense.
Right, and at the restraint stage, should that have to happen, what's the process for that, and how does that get brought back around
So
staff and students and families?
right. So essentially everyone gets restraint, or everyone gets de-escalation training, so that everyone has some skills to de-escalate. Select folks are trained in restraint, because there are ways to restrain and there are ways not to restrain. And the training is to help restrain students effectively without injuring anyone, the restrainer or the restrainee. In the event, and I would say whether there's a restraint or not, if the classroom had to be cleared, a practice we're trying to get more consistent with is sort of processing the event. And there's sort of a structure that we're using. There are a lot of options, but we're using a particular structure to process events with the student, with the staff that were involved, both to process the event for the sort of mental well-being of those involved, but also to understand more about what led to the event, how can we try to prevent this in the future, etc.
And then the communication protocol.
So if there's a crisis command used, so following last fall's events, we agreed from feedback we got from families, if there's a crisis event, crisis command issued for any reason, that parents are going to get notified that there was a crisis event. And that has been followed to the best of my knowledge for this year and for most of last year following the fall. We usually can't say a whole lot in that. I think that's often
right
less than satisfactory to folks. We're often walking a line in terms of what we can share with information. But to let folks know that, something happened and we use this crisis command and everyone's safe. And that's usually the gist of it.
Right.
Yeah, Patrick, I just a general question. I was very impressed with all the presentations by the principals. And although the SEL approaches are they're more or less consistent, across the schools, but there are some variations. And I was wondering what the mechanism is for the various leadership teams in the schools to kind of inform the other schools about what they're doing and whether they're successful or not. I mean, I'm sure there's something in place, but I don't know if you could say something about that.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a formal process for that kind of sharing to happen. We spend, as a leadership team, we spend a lot of time together, and I think there are opportunities through that and there's a lot of other things we do in our time together. But hearing tonight, there's more room to be able to, and some of what you heard tonight is new this year. So we haven't unpacked the successes necessarily from this year. Some schools, like I'm thinking about our sort of sisters east and our brothers west schools, like there's a relationship there with their shared staff, et cetera, that they have maybe more opportunities to share what's working in their schools. And they have shared staff that are seeing what's happening in the different schools for some of those conversations. So there's some just kind of natural connections that way for some of the sharing. And I know principals meet in pairs and other groups outside of our admin time that we have together as a whole team as well. So I think in informal ways it's happening some, and we could look for ways to formalize that more, to capitalize on what's working well across the schools.
Yeah.
And some of it is, for some things, the size of the school, like there are conditions in a school that might position it better for some things to work than other schools. So there's a little bit of that nuance, but still the conversations I think would be worthwhile.
We used to have a district-wide PBIS team to help kind of speak to that, where one or two representatives from each school would come together on a quarterly basis to do some of that sharing. That is a preferred recommendation by the Vermont PBIS system. We could consider getting back to that. I think we kind of got away from it a little bit only because it just seemed like a lot of meetings, to be honest. And so I think that because, as we said, our leadership team is really tight. We have shared SEL coaches, our behavior assistants are able to be supported by our PBIS coordinator. There's some connections there that are helpful. And currently we're actually engaging in some support by a PBIS consultant coach who has been working specifically to customize next steps in looking at where we're the same and where we're different. So that's been an interesting report to get as well.
And I think it might have been Adora that mentioned Bill Huggett. He's kind of our PBIS guy for the district, and he supports all schools. So even having a person that's across multiple environments can bring some information about what are they doing in another school and how's it going.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, so if you've got probing questions, I'm gonna give them to Patrick. If you get probing questions, you're gonna get them to me. Okay, so now we're going to move to our public. That thing takes all the sound away.
We're going to move to our public comment period. Community members, we are about to enter the portion of the public comment period of our meeting. My fellow board members and I recognize the importance of hearing from you on topics the board is considering. As a reminder, the public comment period is not designed to be a discussion, but rather an opportunity for board members to listen to community members. Citizens have two options for sharing comments during this meeting, either virtually on Zoom or here in the room with us. Community members, district students can speak, outside community members. So if you live in a different town than the towns in our district, you require permission. So you'd have to identify that at first, and we have to give you permission because you're from another town. Each individual speaker is allotted 2 minutes, and we're going to work hard to enforce that time limit so that if there are many people who want to speak, that people get a turn. Please speak when you are recognized. Identify yourself by stating your name and the place of residence, and direct your comments to the board. On Zoom, if you would like to speak at public comment, if you send me an email or raise your virtual hand, we will go back and forth between the people in the room and the people on Zoom. Just a few other things to let you know. You can't pass your time on to somebody else. It's just 2 minutes. For those in person, the speakers list is right there. If you haven't signed up and you want to speak, go ahead while I finish up. We usually let students speak first, and I'm not sure if we have any who want to speak, but we usually let them go first if we have students. If you're a large group, we encourage you to designate a spokesperson. And each person will be allowed to speak once. If you don't want to speak at the meeting, You can choose to submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period. One copy of the written comments shall be submitted to the board clerk. That's Liz Sayer. She's our board clerk. And then she will share it with the entire board. Your written comments will then be read by all board members. One additional reminder. I know we all can all agree that the children and youth in our community must always be at the center of everything we do as a school system. They are watching and they look to us for models of how we should engage with one another. To that end, it's our responsibility as members of the Mount Abraham Unified School District community to discuss deeply meaningful topics in a manner that demonstrates civil discourse and mutual respect for one another, especially on topics where we may disagree. Profanity, interrupting, and shouting is not tolerated in this meeting. Remember to keep our students in mind when you share your comments with the board today, since what you say and how you say it matters. The board will now entertain public comment. So, Erin, could you pass me that list right there? I have to climb over the top of all of you. Thank you. So we have Sarah Mangini.
Hey, where's the, should I stand here?
That's fine. Yep,
The desk.
the owl will pick you up right there.
Thank you. We just got one of these in my classroom and the kids were all excited about the funky shape. So, my name is Sarah Mangini. I'm a Moncton resident. I live 2 doors down from Don Griswold. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Bristol Elementary School and a parent to 3 children who attend school in our district. This year, I'm also serving as one of the co-presidents of the Mount Abraham Education Association. As many of you will remember, 2 other Bristol elementary teachers and I stood before this board over a year ago in order to alert you to a safety crisis at BES. It saddens me that we have no choice but to return here following similar circumstances nearly 14 months later. As was the case last year, this fall there have been injuries to students and staff, significant property damage, as you heard, and interruptions to learning. As you've heard, things came to a head on Friday, December 2nd. It has now reached a point at which all ages within our school, all ages of students that is, are adversely affected, either through directly experiencing violent behavior firsthand, being in proximity to it, that is, observing it from a distance, maybe across the playground, crying as they worry about a younger sibling who they worry might be in danger, etc. Students and staff alike are reliving the events of last October. This year, preschool students who witnessed Friday's events have been traumatized. In terms of the staff's reaction, our initial shock and sadness on Friday quickly gave way to anger over the weekend at how these situations have developed over time. Teachers have been asking district administration for help for years. This problem of how to respond to dangerous behavior predates COVID, although COVID, of course, exacerbated the situation, without a doubt. Our new principal, John Bratko, is working hard to find the right solution, but there is only so much that he is allowed to change. His authority is limited by the superintendent, by definition. There remain underlying fundamental problems with our district's approach to responding to student behaviors. So over a year later, here we are again. What can we do now in the immediate future to resolve ongoing safety issues? How can the board and the administration work directly with teachers and the Bristol community to solve this problem? One idea is to quickly, not with delay, but quickly convene a task force made up of various stakeholders in our district, including teachers and school staff, administrators, and parents. While, of course, maintaining the confidentiality of specific students, this task force could review our district's policy
on the limited use when needed of restraint on a student, and verify that each school has people who are adequately trained in de-escalation strategies. This task force should get up and running as soon as possible. Bristol Elementary School, its students and staff, has many strengths. You heard some of them earlier tonight. We desperately need your help so that we can enable students to thrive and be safe. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. And then we have Andrea and Renee.
Is there anyone else on Zoom that wants to speak before I jump in?
Don't see any hands up, and I have an email, but the gentleman is willing to wait till the Bristol crew finishes there.
I will be brief. I'm Andrea Renee. I teach at Bristol Elementary School and I live in Starksboro. And I was one of those people that stood in front of you a year ago. And I guess I just want to say a couple things. One is that throughout that process last year, the superintendent said to me, it was your perception, Andrea, that the school was not safe. And I repeatedly said to him, well, actually, Patrick, that's not true. The school was unsafe today. And it was a dialogue we had at a disagreement that we had, because I continue to believe, as we saw again on Friday, that our school is not safe. And so I guess what I want to say is another unfortunate part of that became the teachers at Bristol were complainers, and we were called complainers by the administration last year because of us voicing our concerns. And so I guess my two things I would like to say is, I heard you about not placing blame, and that's not what we're here to do. But I guess what I want to say is, one, how are we going to get these kids the skills they need to be successful? Because as Patrick said earlier and last year, the current system is not working. So how are we going to get these kids the skills they need? And secondly, I would ask that you treat us with respect as teachers, because there were a number of teachers who sadly predicted this was going to happen. This was not a surprise for teachers. It might have been a surprise for other people, but that when teachers are included in the decision making, I would ask that the teachers be heard in situations like this, when the teachers were continually trying to share information and worries and concerns. So I think working together moving forward, that we not place blame, but that we also really, you hired us as highly qualified teachers, and I ask that you trust us and believe in us, so that we can provide input to you. We're the people in the classrooms dealing with these kids. And so that I would ask that you trust us and that you gain our input and not just trust people who are working outside the classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Is there anyone online? If you raise your electronic hand. Oh, I can't see the.
I think Patrick, I needed that.
Yeah. Wendy?
Hi, I'm a former educational assistant at Bristol Elementary School and a taxpayer in Bristol. I want to start by saying that I have great respect for all the teachers and staff in all of our school systems. They're amazing, and our students are amazing. My two concerns are, one, that the staff is not being heard. That seems to be a continuing thing. And that the people that are being asked to work with our neediest students don't have the training that they need to be successful. So I feel like we're, excuse me, setting up both the students and the staff for failure. If we're going to try to keep these students with the highest needs in our school, and I understand why, we need to give our staff and our support staff the skills that they need to be able to help these students and help their families and help them be successful. Right now, we're not doing them any services. We're not helping the students that are in crisis. We're certainly not helping the other students in the classroom that are scared and wondering why we're not protecting them from these students. And we need to consider, when do we say enough is enough? And I know that's a really hard line. It's a hard call to make, but at some point we have to decide, are we really equipped to deal with these students? And if we're not, bite the bullet, admit defeat, if that's what you want to call it, and get these students and their families into a better position where they're getting the supports that they need so they can be successful in life, and so that the students that are in the classroom can enjoy their education and feel safe, and the parents will feel more comfortable about sending their students to school. We have wonderful, wonderful teachers, wonderful students, wonderful families, but we don't have the correct professionally trained people on the ground and in the classrooms working directly with these students. That's pretty much it.
Light reflecting, I can't see the oh, is that the full screen there?
Yeah.
Is it?
There's a new
It's
hand, right?
Victoria.
Oh,
Victoria?
Hi, my name is Victoria Thompson and I worked at Bristol Elementary last year. I'm from Williston, so I want to make sure it's still okay that I'm speaking.
So, we have to give permission for someone outside of the district to speak in our meetings.
So
All right, sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just came tonight because last year at this time, or around this time, I was one of the teachers who came forward with Sarah and Murnane to talk about a different big incident that happened. And it just really breaks my heart that Bristol's still going through this. It's such an amazing school filled with amazing kids, families, and teachers. And my purpose of coming tonight is just to really hope and put it out there that the teachers have so much insight to give, and that I really hope that the board hears them. Last year, personally, I did not feel heard out, and I really hope that this year the teachers feel more heard because they have so much knowledge and insight to give. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, anyone else in the room?
I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm sorry.
Okay, is that Elizabeth?
It is, who, I'm a little old lady and I have no computer skills.
All right, we can help you. Where do you live?
I also have no children in school. My grandchildren are now all in their 20s. So, there'll be another crop, but anyway. So, I live in Bristol. I live a half an hour from Mount Abe. Half a mile, excuse me, half a mile. Okay,
Okay, we'd love to hear from you.
All right, so I have seen a lot of education happening in a lot of different school systems and a lot of societal change. And everything that I read does say that COVID has really slammed school age kids. But that also the kids were somewhat slammed before COVID also. I had a mother-in-law who was a teacher or substitute for 50 years or 60 years or something like that. And she noticed that after she had been teaching for 30 years or so, maybe 40 years, there was suddenly a big change in the student body. And she'd been teaching the same grade level. I mean, it was kindergarten and first grade is what she'd taught. And she found that suddenly kids themselves were different. And she figured that it seemed to be because there were a lot of divorces, and there were a lot of kids that were living in two different households with two different sets of authority and disciplines. Anyway, I think kids today are also living with with adults, and adults today are are not cooperating with one another as well as they perhaps used to. And there's a lot of polarization. So it's not surprising that kids are not cooperating as well as we might want. My feeling is that it would be probably worthwhile to take a bigger chunk out of academic work and put for at least a year a big effort. I see you're doing a lot of it, but maybe you could do more on socialization, on studying I don't know, anthropology, different systems where people learn to cooperate. Maybe having outdoor adventure stuff like, what's it called, Outward Bound or Knowles or something, that creates bonding. I had one child who was very advanced intellectually and very unadvanced socially, and the other child was very advanced socially and very unadvanced intellectually. So I know that kids who are going to achieve academically, they will. I think a bright kid could probably learn basically all of elementary education when they were 10 or 11 years old. But I think that people in general are better learners and better adults if they are if they have better emotional grounding. And so that's why I'd like to see a real effort to just heal, not just any, kids that are we're trying to wreck the system, but just to see if we can really start bringing some healing. And I would hope all schools would be trying to help society to heal and know that the parents need to be healed and all of that. And I'm very impressed with what you are doing. And as a taxpayer, I'm really behind it. So anyway, I think that I would think that we maybe could be less focused on, have we reached this year what the academic benchmarks are, and try to really prioritize in our society. It seems to be a global problem, actually, to try to redevelop society in terms of being more cooperative and kind, that sort of thing.
Thank you
So,
very much.
Yeah, that's enough. I'm that I've said it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. One check back left in the room.
Don, I'm a parent. I'd like to speak.
Come around.
Those of you who know me, I'm Floyd Davidson. I work for the district. I also have 12 children. Number 11 is in the classroom we're talking about today. I would like to talk about the success of this group. My daughter comes home, and when we talk to her about her day, she says, we'll say Jimmy had a tough day, but he tried real hard. Or she'll say, I get to go to the planning room with his work for that day. And he was really happy to see it and get it. So I would say that we focus on that negative, but truly focus on the positive. What you have done for this child versus what might have happened for that child from our community standpoint is unbelievably successful. Take that and congratulate yourself. My daughter has great empathy. My daughter likes this kid. She sits with him in a chair at a table. Focus on that positive. We can beat people up, we can criticize, we can say you should have, could have, might have, but the reality is, as a group, you've done a substantially spectacular job with this kid. And let's continue to do that for that kid and for every kid. Thanks.
Okay, that'll be the end of this public comment. There is one a little later scheduled in the meeting, but that'll be the end. If we can, if board members need like a 5-minute function break, and then we can see.
Did you have some in an email?
I don't see that it's on there anymore, so
Have you checked the other screens?
I don't have, can you?
We check the participants.
The shadow is terrible. I can't see. Just the participants, we probably could find them fast. No, I don't see. It's not, he's no longer on, so he must have decided to come back to another student. Right, so if board members want to take a 5-minute function break, and then we'll get back and make a determination about stand up, stretch legs. Okay, so it's now 8:20, and the next item on our list is the group writing of the monitoring report, followed by the policy, looking at policy 2.6 asset protection, and then the board committees.
We want to pay for that?
That's a lot to fit in
Yes.
40 minutes. So what's the will? Do you want to table a couple of things and take a stab at one part, or you want to just go and see how we do? Or what do you want to do?
And do we still have an executive session?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Likely brief.
So
Like real brief or?
Yeah.
Likely is as far as I'm willing to go.
With a big
This
tongue.
group is a relative term.
Is it,
What is can you remind me why we're looking at 2.6 again?
we talked about, in our, when we looked at it the last time, Krista wondered if we shouldn't revisit some language and add some additional language around accessibility in there, or whether it's already addressed somewhere else in the policy and we just need, it was a discussion because Krista brought it up.
Mhm.
And some other board members were in agreement with some addition of it, but looking at the policy to see if that's the place to put it, or.
Looking at the policy versus the monitoring report.
Correct. Yes.
can the policy be looked at outside of this meeting and brought back for a discussion as to whether or not it makes sense or?
It could be brought back with samples. I mean, we could definitely do that. It's not going to be at the next December meeting because that is packed already. So, it could definitely be, that could be.
Well, I almost feel like. And how are we proposing to group rate 4.1?
Well, I think most of it is just.
How do you find everything?
Right, how to find everything, how to do it, because there are people here who,
Oh.
remember, we talked about it at the retreat, who
Yeah.
who haven't written a monitoring report, and just to give a little guidance around everybody doing it, is how we initially brought it up, Sarah.
Why don't we just sort of timestamp each of these items and like just say, let's at least start the conversation for the asset protection piece about what information we would need to gather. And then let's actually try to start to write that so we can get it going.
Okay.
I don't know, and do like 20 minutes of each or something like that. Is that a reasonable amount of time?
Yep. I mean.
Can we do the executive session first and then find how much time we have left? How long it goes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with that.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to?
Is it possible, me being somebody who has no idea how to write a monitoring report, is it possible to do that outside of the meeting and create like a how-to? Where it's like, here's how you find these things.
Yep.
And
I
I'm
would love
willing to
that.
like, I'm willing to like
Yeah.
Or
be
me.
part of that.
Or could somebody volunteer to be a mentor? Or people through it?
Yep. That is.
I'd be willing to do that.
Okay, I would love to do that, because then
If
I
you guys
feel
want
like I
me,
could ask
can
questions.
walk you
and-
through
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great.
how to do them.
And the process of that tutorial would be trying to, because we also want to cross this one off.
Right, I don't
Who's
know.
responsible for this
Who-
right now?
We all are.
We all are.
You're signing
Who was
yourself
originally?
up. No one.
Yeah, I don't think anybody signed up for it.
And I think we were trying to try out this notion of instead of having a policy and governance committee, if we set aside
Yeah,
time, so it sort of lends itself to the board committee question.
yeah.
You know, could we this might be our answer about that question. Could we, you know, have these second meetings or the first meetings of the month where a portion of that time is policy related questions, whether it's deepening the language on policy 2.6 or how to write a monitoring report or whatever it is.
Right.
But I think, you know, we're finding how challenging it is to do that as a group.
It is.
I think some of them too, like, not everybody needs that, like how to write a monitoring report, right? That's all let's do. So I don't know that I don't want to take up everybody's time to like really delve into that and ask a million questions that I have. So to be able to do that on the side, I think is a better use of time.
I wonder if you did that, Steve, could you, if you could use it, if you could do the report that's due, but also if you could capture or create together some sort of a how-to that then lives in perpetuity that we can use
Sure.
in the future.
Yeah, no, I think the three of us could write the report as
Yeah.
part of learning. how to-
Can anyone go? Or will we be in a
can't-
quorum?
Can't have a
Yeah.
quorum.
How much can we have?
We just form a committee. Yeah.
Well, you still have to- But you.
There we go. Here's your
So the most eager 5 people get to go and show.
And
Are you
they
really
and they
eager?
can be our policy and governance.
Exactly.
I just don't know how I'm gonna get my.
I'm really good at breaking down things once I know how to do them. So I'm fine with writing a how-to. Whatever, and people can make sure I did it the right way.
I can even screencast it. Oh, fine.
All right, so it sounds like I'm here, leaning towards tabling this action and letting the three of you take it on and come back and.
I'd like to join.
Yeah, I think that sounds
Is that
great.
a quorum that you're doing?
No.
I think
No,
Patrick's
six.
not there.
6 is not a quorum, 7 is a quorum.
Okay, so we're at 4, which is like.
Did you?
Don't worry, I'm not gonna.
The monitoring report I did was like, it didn't exist, what I was monitoring, right?
Oh.
That was, so
Mm.
I've
That's
never
really
actually
hard.
done a functional monitoring.
I've done the same one every time.
Well, and then we also had the question of whether or not we should be putting SEL review under 2.0 or whether it should be somewhere else. So there's some policy stuff that kind of needs to
Let's
be.
start a running list for that committee.
Yes. And I also had a policy on how to make a policy.
Yeah.
The one thing to point out, if there is a board committee formed and that committee has less than a quorum, it still is governed by board
Open meeting.
rules.
Yep.
So you can have 3 people on a committee that is appointed by the board and you have to warn your meetings, you have to take minutes, you have to have a quorum of the 3, et cetera.
What if we see how this goes? And, you
It'd be a
know,
working group that comes back and just,
after the new year, in our meeting in January, we say, it seems like we need this to move into a committee structure because there's more than just this one task. And then we can decide then what to do.
I think the way you're speaking of it now, the structure is
Okay.
safely in a work group / training.
Yeah, okay.
But if it becomes a standing thing with authority designated from the board, that changes it.
Right, as soon as the board says we're gonna form a committee and these are the people, then
Yeah,
you all
right.
have to abide by the same rules we do
Yep.
because you become our arm.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I personally don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, I'm all for institutionalizing committees because we have a mechanism over time, not just to respond to this one monitoring report that needs to get done, but we have a mechanism that's in place that we can then turn to as other issues related to, policy development
like,
arise.
we could have said to the, when somebody said the policy language needs a change, then we could say, okay, go 2.6, bring us some language changes so we can look at them and.
that's right.
So, to that, well, do we want to formally table that before I say something about me?
I'm waiting for a motion and a
I
second.
move to table that action about proofreading.
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor of tabling group writing of a monitoring report 4.1 governance style, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Okay, now.
So,
2.6.
yeah, so with respect to 2.6, I mean, I think I'm comfortable with that being on hold, so we see how this working group develops, but, and I think that, to me, it's almost a bigger thing of looking at all of our policies with a lens toward equity and inclusion, and so this was one place that I saw that I felt we could look more closely at our policy to build in language that's more inclusive, particularly around our facilities and accessibility. But I think there may be other places, and that's something that I think would be part of a larger conversation. So.
I agree. I think that's really important for us to look at, and a committee, policy and governance committee could take a look at that in a macro, big picture sense.
Yeah.
Sorry. So with that, to follow up, what ended up happening with the group? We haven't had enough time. The one we talked about last night.
Oh, yeah, so the
Consulting group.
Insight Education Group, Patrick, Don and I are meeting with them on the 15th.
Okay.
And we're interested in sharing with them that our goal is around community engagement around what does equity look like in our district. And so with that as our goal, what sort of assistance could they envision providing to us? And then we would bring that back to our group, to the board. So I guess we probably can report back on the 20th.
We have time.
If we have time.
Can you also, I mean, I would just toss it out there about what you just said about looking at the policy with that lens, like having somebody else read them with that lens, to just give their feedback on it if we are working with them.
well, I know the VSBA also does a policy review.
Mm-hmm.
We could also
Oh.
talk about what services they have and whether they would go through our policies and make some recommendations.
Yeah. I know that, Kevin, you might be able to share more about this after this happens. I don't know if it happened yet with the planning commission and doing some work around developing this kind of
Yeah, so
a speed bump.
the town has a grant for, can't remember the equity, diversity, inclusion. And it's to drive, quite honestly, I think back of what we've done already, a lot of the awareness, a lot of the training that we've done for employees and committees, but one of the things that they want us to do on an ongoing basis is to develop some sort of tickle list or speed bump to have that you would consciously go through and check these items off, if you will, as you're creating documents and procedures and all that kind of stuff. The planning commission is in the process of reviewing zoning regulations, specifically with respect to housing. And so it's ripe for us to do the beta testing, I guess you could say, with what the town's considering. And that's not set up yet. It was going to be set up for January, but there's some conflicts arising. So I'm not sure if it'll get pushed up. I doubt it, but it might go to February if we start that training and process.
So I'm good with adding to your growing list.
Well, and just in terms of trying to stick with the current agenda.
Yeah.
2.6. Do you want to come back with some suggested language
Yeah,
or?
why don't we? mean,
I
we
can
can-
totally do some research.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I actually hope to do that before today, but it didn't happen. So.
Yeah. So I move we table 2.6.
And do we need a motion since it was just a review?
Oh, it wasn't. an
Right,
action.
no, it was just a review,
Okay.
so, yeah, we can get some more, all right, and then. That brings us back to discussion around board committees, which I wonder if we wouldn't be more equipped to handle. After you do your initial work with the three of you. And. Just the initial work on that report, and then. Bailey sounds like she's gonna write up her how-to, and then. I think. We'd have the, how did that work for the three of you, and then. Does the how-to help, and. Then we'll be looking at the language, and then. I think we're starting down a path of. More committees.
I got
A policy and governance committee.
I've got a question, I think, with committees, some of the area boards that have committees are not as pure policy governance, if you will. I don't know this, as we are. And they're more of a hybrid. So once you start having committees, are you looking, does it affect how we have been operating as a board with policy governance, and how do those two things reconcile? Because when you start like with a finance committee and a facilities committee and a policy governance committee, all these different committees, there's a whole widening, if you will, of detail work, if you will, that the board would be considering. So I think we should understand that relationship too, as we start talking about committees.
Well, I think each of the committees, first of all, we should identify what we think we need for committees. And then two, look at each one of them specifically to say, what is it we want to get out of them? Do we really just want to dive into the meaning too much? Because we're going to do a finance committee? Or is there something that helps the board do its work?
Yeah, and that's, I think that's sort of what I'm saying, is what is the relationship with those committees with the way we govern ourselves today?
Well, here's an example. I know people are frustrated a little bit with with our financial review. We have to sign off on payroll and a giant pile of requisitions every month. And there isn't really a group that kind of studies them just, in more depth than each of us has time to look at them right now. And has time to maybe look through Lloyd's monthly spreadsheet in a little more detail, maybe have Lloyd sit in and walk us through it and give us a little bit more of a deeper dive on the sheet. Sort of coalesced into a smaller group that can bring back, recommendations to the larger group. So the larger group doesn't have to necessarily pay as close attention to that particular issue as the study group, people who might be more interested in it or have the capacity. And I think that was the thing we struggled with the last time, was getting people to agree to be on a committee. For starters, it means another meeting or another meeting and maybe more homework. And who had the bandwidth to do that? And we thought maybe we could try to handle it by shoehorning these issues into a second meeting agenda. And I just don't know how successful we think that is. The approach that we're taking right now with having the three of us kind of work on 4.1 and bring it back is that structure, because we're really bringing it back to the whole group.
Right.
We're not really forming a committee to do it. We're just giving some board members some homework, and then the board's going to work on it when we bring the homework back. And whether we wanted to keep trying to do things that way, I don't know if you can really do that with the financial review. You can't. I don't think you can really sort of make that. You could make it a rotating.
That's what we used to do on Mount Abe, like 3 people would focus in on it when it was their month, and then the next month. And in a way that spreads the knowledge around, because everybody's looking at it for a little while at least and getting familiar with it.
And, it does share the load a little bit.
Right.
And, if it was a set schedule, this month it's going to be these 3 folks, then you can plan for it. You can earmark time for it, and you will be more knowledgeable down the road about what it is you're doing.
Yeah, I agree with what Steve said. I mean, I think our ability to do a deeper dive on some of these issues would be really useful. I don't know about the rest of you all, but every time I get those things to sign from Jennifer once a month, I'm signing it and I'm wondering, am I going to end up in jail? Because I mean, I have no idea.
They're taking Floyd.
I've
first.
resolved it. It's all historical information. You're signing on invoices that are 30 days old for work that was done 60 days ago.
Yeah,
People have already been paid when you sign it.
I know, but still, maybe it's my legal training.
I used
I
to
worry every month.
I used to study that stuff
It's such a,
for a couple hours, and I don't
me,
mean
it's just incredibly archaic for to have that whole thing in place.
That's the
I mean,
state.
I don't know.
I understand what it's all about, but it's from the days when, there were 3 board members and 6 kids in a school, and that's what it's from.
And even more so, you're seeing it after Floyd and the finance team have looked at it multiple times. The treasurer has already signed off on everything. It's already come across many eyes first.
Well, I know, but we have the fiduciary responsibility.
Exactly, right,
Not Floyd.
Yeah.
And so, and I think developing deeper expertise on the board will make our board decision making a little bit more valid.
And there are people.
And
All right, Sarah, Krista, and then Sarah. She's waiting.
Just as someone who's been running a committee for a while, I would say that I think that there's some challenges and some benefits. And so I don't know that it's like that binary, but I think we just have to be careful, like of the concerns you raise. But I also see where, we all might have different things that we're interested in. I'm really interested in community engagement. I am really not as interested in the financial piece. But, I appreciate bringing back to the whole board what we're working on, and know that that needs to ultimately be approved by this group before we move forward on anything. That said, it's frustrating sometimes when the whole board is less invested or involved in that committee work, but so that's the push-pull. And on the financial piece, I think I would be less interested in the board knowing about those particular spreadsheets than I would be about like the bigger issues, like how is Act 173 going to impact our budget, or how is and those are things that, I can't keep up with myself. but I can keep up with another thing. But having several board members understanding that, I kept asking those annoying ESSER questions because I want to think about that in relation to budget building, but it would be great if there were a couple of people who were really thinking about that. And able to think about all the parts and pieces that I might not have as much time to do. And then the other caution is just staff time that, at the beginning, I think Patrick attended all of our community engagement meetings, less so now, but at different points we might need to pull him in. I think we do need to be careful about requiring more of our staff to support committees.
Sure.
I think that, if some of those committees cannot be in person, then it is a little bit, or not even a committee, but just like the gathering or the working group, that I can find 30 minutes in a random part of my day, whereas to be in person, I have to be at this time of my day, and I'm not willing to give up more of this part of my day. Like I'm not there. So but I would go and hang out with Floyd and a couple other people and look at a financial review 3 times a year, so I have a better idea for 30 minutes. And like that, if that also fit into Floyd's day to help have a voice for it. I mean, I was out of capacity being on merger study, but I really enjoyed that work, like in a strange way, but like it was a productive sort of experience that produced, I don't know what, but
Really?
but I felt like, but the time on it was like really pretty
It's a
managed.
big match for your interests. and
Right,
stuff.
it was a big match for my interests, whereas I'm not sure that there's a couple of other things that I'm all that interested in, so.
So we are discussing, but do we want to discuss more or should we just leave it here?
I think we're evolving. Like, I think we had a spot and we've come to like sort of a spot where we are as a plateau. And we have an opportunity to go in a couple of different directions. And I do think we don't need to rush into them all. I think we need to really be mindful about what we're doing and have, because I think this might be the right track for us to develop some working groups or committees that I think would have greater buy-in from people or a little ownership. But I don't know I want to commit to something today.
Fair.
Similarly, I'm thinking like, I could definitely commit to a working group to figure out how to learn how to do this or dive into one type of subject, but to commit to another meeting for I don't know how long.
A structured meeting.
Yeah, it's a little bit trickier and like online meetings do not work in my house because it is not quiet and my internet's terrible. So I kind of have to like go somewhere, which is really challenging too. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we need to be mindful about it. But I think we have been discussing it for over 6 months. And so it's not like we're, rushing into anything. And I think also, I get the issue of meetings. I have a pretty full schedule myself. But on the other hand, I think there was some discussion whether we incorporate a sort of committee meetings into one of the meetings during the month, or we eliminate one of the board meetings each month and have time for the committees to meet. I'd probably prefer the latter.
Yeah, I think when you and I were passing some conversation back and forth, that sounded like a good idea. Our possible idea was to
Yeah, I just know.
substitute committees.
I just know. I don't know. I'm on a number of boards, and most of them have fairly modest budgets compared to what our $35 million budget. And I don't know, all these other organizations I've been involved in, they have committees. And the committees do the heavy lifting and then report out to the board so that the board can make the decisions.
Yeah.
And I just think that might be the way that's my sort of inclination, is to do that, because I find that, and we've discussed this all before, when we're all sitting around the room twice a month, we only can go so deep, we only have so much time. you know, Dawn complains every single meeting about how packed the agenda is. Because, and we're constantly having to say, table this, table that, because we don't have time. So I'm just not sure that the approach that we've been taking serves the needs of our district as well as it might. Again, that's just my view.
I'm cool with that too.
I'm wondering about Kevin's point. Is a next step, because I hear your point too about, we've been talking about this for a while, and when's there gonna be action? Like, what is the action?
And then it
Um,
was in an hour.
Perhaps a next step, which may be an action step that can lead to more actions, is do we bring somebody in from VSBA or wherever to say, how can committees be successful in a policy governance environment?
The whole time I was hearing Val say, a committee serves the board. It's what they can do to help the board do their work.
Right.
So we should be thinking of that as the committee is not gonna be telling them how to do their job. The committee's gonna be helping us do our job better. So,
And a little training on that may frame
right.
what committees make sense or don't make sense, and if they all make sense, how to do that work.
Isn't CVU their policy governance and they have committees? Would they be a resource?
Possibly, I don't know if they're policy governance or not.
They-
Oh,
I thought they were.
I've heard perhaps.
they were.
Otter Valley is. That's who.
The Career Center is policy governance, and they have.
Yeah, okay.
I think it can be done. I just think there are cautionary tales.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the fact that we don't have a policy and governance committee, or policy governance, is a head scratcher.
Well, I think the hope was for everybody to really understand that system because it is different to a lot of us and new, but I think that you know, we're now at a point where the policies have been developed that we get to wanting to refine or deepen, and we're kind of, we can't make it happen. So, yeah.
Well, like I said, when you asked Sandy and I to look at potentially forming one, the first thing I did was, okay, well, where is our policy for forming a policy? And we didn't have one. So I'm like, yeah, well, I think we need a governance committee. Just so we can, because that's not something we're gonna want to group wordsmith here in a large group, probably in the middle of a board meeting. It could be.
It's so fun.
Everybody works a little better, I think, if there's something to react to rather than having to try to build it from scratch.
Yep, we've always said that all along. It's better to
Always.
give you something to bounce off of than
Right.
to come in at blank.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Well, can we keep this on the agenda though,
Yeah,
so we don't just sort of forget about it for a couple of months?
No, well, there's gonna be something else going on. for a couple
Well, I mean,
months, but
I
we'll keep cycling it back in.
I would propose we sort of see how it goes and then you report back. And at that point, we decide if it's worthy of, maybe you guys can make a recommendation.
Well, I think what we want to do is we want to set a firm time in the next agenda for that to come back.
Right, but it seems like it
Because
would be,
if we're
if
doing-
you need time to meet, so maybe like one of the meetings after the new year would make sense.
That's fine, as long as we have a
Yeah.
set time to put it down.
Got it.
And
It is.
that way, the homework group is plugged into an agenda item that accomplishes the board goal.
Yeah, it's just, even if it's an update. Right?
Well, we're going to present the 4.1 policy. We're going to write it while we're learning how to do it.
So right now you're the working.
I can only view the work plan. I was gonna put it in for you, but I can only view the work plan.
Just to clarify, it sounded like we have one committee currently.
No.
Community.
Yep.
And that we are sort of toying with two additional financial and policy governance.
I think,
was there another committee that we didn't bring up in this discussion that suddenly, facilities?
well,
Yeah.
and then
That's
it'll
just a
be bargaining.
traditional school board committee. Career Center has a facilities committee. I sit on it and we review the capital plan that Patrick puts out for 2.6
You don't meet like a ton.
every month.
Yeah. And the Hannaford Career Center requires you to serve on a committee.
Yeah,
So
most-
there's nobody missing. You are required to assist with the work.
Okay, now I was that one.
That's a good requirement.
Especially if we don't have that second meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That requirement.
Yeah, so that the same people aren't always carrying the load. Just there, or Bailey, did you have your hand up?
Oh, I'm just wondering, I don't want to keep pushing this too far down the road, like Brad's saying, but I wonder if we shouldn't get information soon. I know we're getting filled up from the VSBA first. And then maybe we can when we have that information, just make a decision.
We could shoot for that January 10th.
Yeah.
Date to see if the SBA is available to come and talk about all of committees in the policy governance.
They can also talk about their policy review service.
But either way, I don't think that prevents you guys from starting your
We can
conversation.
still do our-
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just learning. I'm just learning. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I was gonna, well, I'm wondering if we shouldn't just talk through the meeting prep, do public comment and talk.
And then go to executive.
And do executive session at the end, come out and
People aren't having to wait.
People don't
Still a
have
lot
to
of
wait.
people on. Yeah.
Sounds great.
I think
Yeah,
that's-
so I know when the evaluation's filled out, you're gonna say that I didn't follow the agenda, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna skip around. So, we can just go through the meeting prep and then take the public comment. Does that work for everybody? All right, so the meeting prep, as you heard, the second meeting in December, the regular business meeting is, the agenda is packed. We looked at it last night and
Do you
it's,
want to tell people what the big items are?
so the budget, we're gonna be looking at the budget. It's getting a little closer to our deadline. We have from the 20th, we have probably another month and a couple of days before we have to just settle on and adopt. And the Hannaford Career Center comes and gives their presentation about their budget, so that's a fair amount of time
On next.
on the 20th. The other piece is we need to talk about central office. Because the lease is coming, coming due or on the end of it, and we need to make start having the discussion about what we're gonna do about that. And we sort of we hint around the budget and, maybe compiling a group of things to consider for a bond. So we have those to talk about in December.
And related to that, the potential request to use funds from the capital reserve,
Right.
which would require a vote.
That's the community vote, or that's the vote, yeah.
So the
that
board would
be-
have to
Are we
warn it.
considering spending out of the ed fund too? Because we have to vote on that.
Yes,
That's-
but probably future, probably not December
Oh,
20th.
that's right, we're gonna hold that.
Right.
And then,
I may be able to bring something December 20th if there's space for it, but that's work in progress right now.
and then we have an update on the conversation with IUG.
Right, because by then we will have met with them, so. So that's what.
Anyone want to add anything
No.
to the agenda?
4.1.
Yeah.
Let's go right for a one.
So that's on top of
On the
monetary
20th.
reports,
Christmas.
on top of monetary reports, 3.4, 3.2, 4.3.
So,
Do the monitoring reports have to be at that December meeting, or can they be pushed?
they don't have to be, but, I mean,
We're
if
aiming
somebody
for it.
says, I have not finished that report, then we just say, the report's not finished, table it until the next meeting and go on.
Typically,
So-
these are a lot of work between meetings, less so
At the
taking
meeting.
up time at the meeting,
Right.
unless there's something unique.
Right, there might be a lot in between.
We never discuss monitoring reports. do we?
No. All right.
Mine's been some-
Okay, and then the other piece around the meeting preparation is at the retreat this summer.
I think it was you, Sarah, who said, we need, when we look at the evaluation, most of it is about the chair position and we
Yeah.
need more like, how are we doing? And we talked about that peer to peer and I put that in the last, I think Erin asked like, hey, what about that? That peer, I put that in the bottom of the chair notes of the, not this meeting, I don't think, but I think it was the last chair notes. So you all could refresh your memory about who your buddy was that you check in with after a meeting and if you can't do that, then you can do a self-evaluation and look at what you had done, kind of thing. But I did create sort of a new evaluation if you want to look at that and just get back to me about whether you want to try that one or.
Oh, it's on the agenda right now.
Yeah, it is. It's click, if you click the new.
So that's the
Oh,
board
okay.
meeting.
Yeah. So that instead of, right now, we have one that's mostly directed around questions about the chair.
So the top
There's-
section really should be our own.
Right, well, the top section we could answer as a group or,
Mhm.
you know. I left some of the chair questions in there because that that gives evidence to whoever writes the board chair roles. Report. So you don't have to, I mean, you can just individually send me a message like, well, I'd add this or I wouldn't add that, and I can bring you another copy to look at and.
Thanks.
So,
What date, chair notes, did you put the peer thing in?
I think it was one of the November meetings.
Okay.
Everybody has their buddy.
You know what? What's it called? What's the?
I think I have you guys.
If I can just look it up on.
Oh,
the
It might be worth,
Peer-to-peer,
Found it?
yeah. 20, yep.
it might be worth putting, is that on the drive, Don, or?
Yeah.
Can you put those pairs in?
No, that's the old one.
Can you put the
That's
pairs
all
in? the-
2022.
Yeah.
Here.
Agenda.
There was there was one for individuals and then there was one.
I found it.
You did?
Yep.
What's it called?
Chair notes 11/22.
All right, there you go.
You want me to read them?
Sure. And then we
Okay.
can-
List Kevin and Brad. Is this old?
I don't know, does it have Sandy on it?
Nope.
No.
Steve and Aaron, Krista and Liz, Sarah and Kristen, Bailey and Chris. There's a lot of KRIS.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll make some more friends. Add them into our group.
Yeah, we need 2 more, right?
Okay. So we're gonna do our evaluation now. As well.
Do you have the old one open?
I can do it.
All right.
We're gonna do public comment first.
Yeah, well, we're gonna just finish up this portion and then
Okay.
go to public comment.
Okay,
and then-
what is the level of engagement of all board members? High or low?
Hi.
Does the agenda follow it?
No.
It was strategically pivoted,
I was gonna say, yeah.
appropriate,
No, and thank you.
appropriately readjusted.
Yeah.
Oh,
Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board? Yes or no?
yeah.
Is the chair effective in fostering a professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members, and ensuring the integrity of the board process? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Other feedback for the chair?
I think the review before our first public comment was helpful. Just kind of get everybody on the same page. And I think it went really well.
What went well at the meeting?
The presentations.
Yeah, that
were
was,
so good.
yeah, they were.
Thank you to them for their work to do that.
I want to appreciate just that I thought the overall meeting went really well.
Yeah.
Considering. And we were flexible and adaptable. What suggestions do you have for ways to improve for juniors?
I think continue to be flexible on when to hold public comment. Or move the agenda around. Within the rules. Yes, within.
What was that?
Within the rules. Within the rules, yeah.
The guidelines, that's it.
All right. Good. Then we still have some people online. If you're online and you wish to make a public comment, raise your electronic hand and we'll recognize you. All right, I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, so we do need an executive session. So when we come out of the executive session, the plan is just to adjourn the meeting and you'll not take any other action. So the two topics that we are going to need to cover under Title I VSA 5313A are the Lincoln exit agreement and just a brief check back in around the superintendent evaluation. And so we'll invite Patrick in.
And are we going to do a breakout room for Liz or?
Or I have my computer. I'll just.
Do you have a breakout? You don't have breakout room capability set up right now.
I can, I'm just thinking typically what we've done is close this meeting,
Right.
adjourn this,
Oh, and just have her jump onto
and then
it.
we can just have it up on. So we can use all this
That's fine.
equipment, but a
Yeah.
different link.
Yeah, I'm gonna, Liz, I'm gonna send you a link. I have to send it to you, right?
So I move, we go into executive session.
Well, we don't have a motion yet, so.
I did.
Oh,
I did.
sorry.
You do now.
Pass out a card, she's done.
Second.
Just 9:05. All those in favor of going into executive session under Title I VSA 5313A, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.